Chapter 1749. The skinny man's face sank even more when he heard Jinshin's provocative words. Cold, killing intent had already appeared in his eyes. Ling Hogong looked at Jinshin. Although Jinshin's comprehension of laws had reached the level of an overgod, his personal cultivation was just too weak. On the other hand, both the skinny man's cultivation and comprehension of laws had reached the level of an overgod. Even though Jinshin had comprehended the laws of the sword, one of the laws with the greatest offensive power, Ling Hogong still did not believe that Jinshin was the skinny man's opponent. However, Ling Hogong could not say anything more when he saw how confident Jinshin was. He retreated to one side with his sword. He wanted to see just how Jinshin would be able to deal with the skinny man without fear. Master Chanlong and the several dozen overgods gathered there all remained silent. However, without any exception, all of their gazes were fixed on Jinshin. Their gazes were rather sharp. Many people believe that Jinshin's comprehension of laws was far greater than his cultivation because he had obtained some great fortuitous encounter in the divine king's dwelling. However, they did not want to stand out, so they were more than happy to let the skinny man move against Jinshin. Unless they had no other choice, they really did not want to offend an overgod so easily, especially one who had comprehended the laws of the sword, one of the laws with the greatest offensive power. Of course, there was another reason why they did not want to take action, which was that nothing that could interest them had appeared. Once something that would be of great help to them appeared, they would even be willing to risk their lives against people who were slightly more powerful than them, let alone those who had comprehended the laws of the sword. At the very back of the group, the young man with a fan and the burly man called Uncle Chin made their way into the divine king's dwelling at a steady pace like they were taking a stroll. The young man looked around along the way as if he was interested in everything there. Is this the divine King Duanmu's abode? But I don't look like much, the young man with a folding fan said in disappointment as he looked around. The middle-aged man didn't say anything. Instead, he cast his gaze into the depths of the immortal's cave and onto Jinshin. His previously ordinary eyes suddenly began to shine brightly. He has comprehended laws as an overgod, but his cultivation is only equivalent to a deity. What impressive talent this person has. However, his energy seems rather strange. It actually makes me feel blurry. He doesn't seem to practice a regular cultivation method, Uncle Chin murmured. Uncle Chin, are you talking about that person called Jinshin? Even you say that his talent is amazing. It seems that this person does have some ability. I wonder how many years he has been cultivating. The young man gently fanned himself and said casually. Uncle Chin's expression became somewhat serious. However, in the end, he could not help but sigh in amazement. Young master, I feel like this person hasn't even cultivated for 1,000 years. This is the first time I, Qin Zheng, have seen talent like this. The young man paused when he heard that. He stared at Uncle Chin in surprise and said in disbelief, What? He hasn't even cultivated for 1,000 years? Doesn't that mean his talent is even greater than mine? Uncle Chin, are you sure you're not seeing things? There's such a great difference in cultivation between us, so I can see through many things with a single glance. Of course I'm not seeing things. He has indeed cultivated for an even shorter period of time than you. Young master, said Qin Zheng. Joy immediately appeared on the young man's face. He said, I heard him say that he's an independent cultivator who doesn't belong to any sect. Uncle Chin, we must rope him in. It's best if he joins our clan. Uncle Chin's eyes shone brighter and brighter. He immediately expanded the senses of his soul, enveloping all the regions in the divine king's dwelling that no longer had formations. Uncle Chin's soul naturally enveloped the sword comprehension building where Jinshin had comprehended the way of the sword earlier. However, none of the several dozen overgods present sensed Uncle Chin's presence at all. None of them sensed it, including the late overgods. In just a single moment, Uncle Chin's senses of his soul had discovered that Jinshin and the others had remained in the sword comprehension building for quite some time. He immediately became even happier and said, Looks like he comprehended the way of the sword in the sword comprehension building. The marks left behind by Duanmu in the sword comprehension building aren't some impressive legacy. so it won't be easy to benefit from them. However, this person called Jianshan can use these marks to break through to Overgod. What great comprehension abilities. If we can really rope him in, it'll be a great merit. Since we want to rope him in, why don't we hurry up? Jianshan just happens to be in trouble. It's a great opportunity for us, the young man said rather eagerly. There's no hurry. There's no hurry. We can use this opportunity to see his strength, said Qinzheng. On the other side, the skinny, middle-aged man had already taken action. He wielded his spear, and the laws of wood condensed in the surroundings. He directly stabbed towards Jianshan with the power of laws. The skinny man did not hold back at all. His gaze was cold as he directly stabbed towards Jianshan's forehead, aiming for his vital point. A cold light flashed through Jianshan's eyes the moment the skinny man stabbed out. With a thought, 2 finger-sized strands of profound sword chi appeared. Powerful sword chi permeated the surroundings, immediately causing the expressions of over half of the overgods present to change. Even the eyes of the late overgods narrowed suddenly. At that moment, everyone's expressions changed. All of their gazes were gathered on Jianshan, or more accurately, they were gathered on the 2 strands of profound sword chi above Jianshan's head. All of them felt threatened by the 2 strands of profound sword chi. The weaker they were, the greater the sense of threat they felt. The skinny, middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. Without any hesitation, his arm trembled, and he stabbed out with even more power. Swish! With a flash of silver light, one of the 2 strands of profound sword chi above Jianshan's head had already shot out. It moved extremely quickly, surpassing the speed of lightning. It collided with the skinny man's spear in a single instance. Boom! A deafening boom erupted as the 2 of them clashed. The skinny middle-aged man only felt a tremendous force, which knocked his spear aside. His laws of wood were directly obliterated by the extremely sharp sword chi. The profound sword chi easily neutralized the attack. That was not all. After destroying the man's attack, the profound sword chi did not weaken at all. It continued to surge into the sky, radiating with a terrifying sword chi that shocked all the overgods present. It directly shot towards the skinny, middle-aged man's forehead under his shocked gaze. No! The skinny, middle-aged man roared out in fear. He was actually unable to dodge the incoming profound sword chi at all. All he could do was watch helplessly as the profound sword chi rapidly enlarged in his eyes and approached his forehead. Silently, the profound sword chi shot through the skinny, middle-aged man's forehead and emerged from the back of his head. The skinny middle-aged man's eyes became stunned. There was still some lingering fear in his eyes. Under the attack of the profound sword chi, his soul failed to escape in time, resulting in the destruction of his soul. Chapter 1750. Boom! With a muffled sound, the skinny middle-aged man's body fell straight to the ground. His eyes were still wide open, as if he had died with a grievance. Perhaps even he had never thought that Jianshan, whom he did not take seriously, would possess such terrifying strength. He had actually been slain in a single clash by the profound sword chi, where even his soul could not escape in time. At that moment, the surroundings fell silent. Everyone stared at Jianshan and the skinny, middle-aged man on the ground in disbelief. Their hearts churned. A few early overgods could not help but stagger backwards. Their gazes towards Jianshan were filled with fear. In particular, when they noticed the second strand of profound sword chi hovering above Jianshan's head, they all shivered from the bottom of their hearts. Jianshan did not withdraw the second strand of profound sword chi immediately. The finger-sized strand of profound sword chi hovered above his head, radiating with surging sword chi as if it was warning all the overgods present. Ling Hogong gasped as well. His gaze towards Jianshan underwent a drastic change. At the same time, he felt rather self-deprecating. Originally, he thought that Jianshan was not the skinny, middle-aged man's opponent, so he wanted to help him out. However, looking at it now, Jianshan did not need his help at all. He had slain an early overgod in a single clash. Ling Hogong was shocked by such strength. What is this? Is it treasure? Is it a secret technique? Or is it some powerful battle skill? Are the two strands of sword chi left behind by the Divine King? The sword chi is definitely not the power left behind by the Divine King. I think it's probably some kind of powerful sword technique. A single strand of sword chi killed an early overgod instantly. If he used both strands at the same time, even mid-overgods would struggle to fend them off. Even late overgods would probably become heavily injured. The overgods and the surroundings conversed secretly. They discussed the profound sword chi intensely. Jinshin had already established his authority by killing the skinny, middle-aged man. Everyone present had witnessed Jinshin's strength. They knew that Jinshin was not someone to be trifled with. Jinshin knew that he possessed the ability to establish himself among the overgods, so he slowly withdrew the second strand of profound sword chi. He glanced around slowly and clasped his fist at everyone. Everyone, I don't know much about the Divine King's dwelling, so I'm willing to share what I know with you. Everyone's faces changed when they heard that. Jinshin is willing to share information about the Divine King's dwelling. I'm filled with admiration. Ling Tianho clasped his hands at Jinshin. I'm Guhan Swallow. Greetings, Sir Jinshin. Once the matters in the Divine King's dwelling are resolved, I hope that Jinshin can visit my Guhan clan as a guest when you have the time. Although I don't comprehend the laws of the sword, I'm willing to exchange my cultivation experiences with Jinshin. Jinshin looked over. Guhan Swallow was an alluring beauty. She only seemed to be in her 20s. Haha, I also hope that Jinshin can visit my Feng family as a guest when you have the time. I, Feng Buell, have studied the laws of formations quite a bit. Although I can't discuss the laws of the sword with Jinshin like Ling Hogong, I like all the fine wine in the world, and I have a large collection. I just wonder if I have the honor of drinking with you, Jinshin, Feng Buell said with a smile. Feng Buell said with a smile. He claimed to be an old man, but in reality, he looked like he was only in his 20s. He was handsome and dashing, like a tree in the wind. However, Jinshin was not surprised at all, because even though some of the overgods present did not seem old, they were all old monsters who had cultivated for countless years. Some of the overgods and the surroundings immediately came over to befriend Jinshin. As an expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword, there were very few people who could defeat Jinshin unless they had also comprehended laws on the same level as the laws of the sword. Coupled with his powerful, profound sword chi, it was enough to make everyone tremble. They all came to befriend him with the thought that even if they could not become friends, it would be best if they did not become enemies. Jinshin returned their greetings. He gained a basic understanding of some of the overgods present from the conversation. None of them were simple people. However, he also knew that these people were so friendly right now because there was no conflict of interest between them. Once they ventured into the depths of the dwelling and fought over the treasures left behind by the Divine King Duanmu, these people could become his opponents or even enemies at any time. Afterwards, Jinshin shared all the information he knew about the Divine King Duanmu's dwelling. In reality, the information was not much of a secret. It was just some information about the situation in the dwelling, so the overgods could easily learn about it. When the overgods learned that Jinshin had only obtained some of the items left behind by a disciple of the Divine King Duanmu, they were naturally not interested at all. They were all ancestors of large clans, and they had all accumulated a great amount of wealth over the years. The only thing that truly interested them in the dwelling was the Divine King Duanmu's legacy. They obviously did not care about the items left behind by his disciple. Currently, they had no idea that Jinshin had obtained a precious pill, like the soul recovery pill from the pill storage room. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for them to maintain their composure. With that, no one purposefully targeted Jinshin anymore. At the same time, due to the shocking strength that Jinshin had displayed, no one dared to provoke him for no reason, even though there was a huge difference between his cultivation and the comprehension of laws. The skinny middle-aged man was the best example. Afterwards, with Master Chanlong leading the way, everyone continued forward. Jinshin blended into the crowd as well, making his way to the depths of the dwelling with everyone. The space ring on the finger of the overgod he had killed naturally ended up in Jinshin's hands as well. Jianxin checked the space ring and discovered that although it was nowhere near as wealthy as the divine king Duanmu's disciple, it still contained quite a few divine crystals. There were low-grade, mid-grade, and high-grade divine crystals, as well as a few miscellaneous materials and pills. Jianxun stowed the space ring away casually and sent it to the bright moon divine hall silently. After giving some orders, he gave all the low-grade and mid-grade divine crystals to the people in the divine hall to cultivate. He kept the high-grade divine crystals for himself, planning on exchanging them for mid-grade divine crystals in the future. However, to Jianxin's surprise, Shenghuan had already reached the peak of reciprocity after spending all these years in the bright moon divine hall absorbing divine crystals to cultivate. She was about to reach godhood, while everyone else's cultivation increased rapidly as well. Chapter 1751. Now, Shenghuan the white tiger and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast progressed the fastest out of the group of people who had come to the saint's world with him. At the same time, they were the three most powerful people. As for Xiongzhong, he remained at early reciprocity. Moreover, Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu had all reached the origin realm as well. They had broken through receival and reached returnance. Although their rate of cultivation was not as fast as the white tiger and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast, they were still regarded as geniuses in the saint's world. Jianxun did not remain in the bright moon divine hall for long. After sending it into his space ring, he retreated. He looked at the over-gods in the surroundings, and his gaze gradually became determined. He had already secretly made up his mind. Once he dealt with the matter with the divine king, he would do his best to help the Mo clan establish themselves in the Dong province. Once the Mo clan status stabilized, he would release the people in the bright moon divine hall so that they could cultivate in the Mo clan. He did not do this in the past, because he was not powerful enough and he had offended the Liu family. However, the situation was different now. He was confident that his current strength was enough for him to gain a foothold in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. After all, there were only so many overgods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Even if the ancestors of the 5 provinces and the overgods in the royal capital were added together, there were only around a dozen of them. Moreover, most of them were early overgods. Everyone, please wait a moment. This formation is extremely powerful, so please allow me to study it. Master Chanlong's ancient voice rang out. He had already sat before the formation as mysterious inscriptions flickered on his 8 trigrams disc. The overgods in the surroundings all sat down and meditated with their eyes closed. Master Chanlong was the person with the greatest mastery over formations among everyone present, so the task of getting through the formation naturally fell to him. If it were not for the fact that Master Chanlong had found the crux of the formation, allowing them to directly attack the weak point of the formation, they would not have been able to enter the Divine King's dwelling, even with over 60 overgods gathered here. Jianxun looked at Master Chanlong as he studied. He also sat down silently. Fairy Haiyue had found the weak point of the formation earlier, but it was not fixed. Instead, it would constantly change as the formation operated, so he had no idea where it had moved to now. However, it was clearly not suitable for Fairy Haiyue to appear here with the current situation. Otherwise, once many overgods became interested in Fairy Haiyue, even he would not be able to protect her. As a result, he obviously could not rely on Fairy Haiyue to get through the formation. Many gods had already entered the entrance to the Divine King's dwelling. The path to the depths of the dwelling was already filled with overgods, so the gods naturally did not dare to approach it. Instead, they scattered in all directions to search for their own fortuitous encounters. In the end, many gods entered the cultivation grounds of the Divine King's descendants in an attempt to comprehend the markings there. Later on, there were even many deities who appeared here. Brother Jianxun, I heard that the people of the Mo clan and the Ando clan from the Dong and province have entered the dwelling ahead of time. Is Brother Jianxun a part of our divine kingdom of Pingtian as well? Ling Hogong arrived beside Jianxun and asked politely as all the overgods meditated with their eyes closed. A few of the overgods in the surroundings immediately opened their eyes when they heard Ling Hogong's words. They all looked at Jianshan. I'm not a part of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, but I could be considered half a part of it, Jianshan smiled. He had appeared in the territory of the divine kingdom of Pingtian as soon as he had arrived in the saint's world. So it was only natural that he referred to himself as half a part of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. You know Guhan Yin and Fengbuel. This is Eugene, the ancestor of the Yu family from the Sublime Province. As he said that, Ling Hogong pointed at a white-haired old man. That's right. I never thought I would be right. Come, Jianshan, let me introduce you. You know Guhan Yin and Fengbuel. This is Eugene, the ancestor of the Yu family from the Sublime Province. Eugene clasped his fist at Jianshan and smiled kindly. This is Bing Lu, the ancestor of the Yubing clan from the frigid Snow Province. Ling Hogong continued with the introductions to Jianshan. The hunchbacked old man, Bing Lu, nodded at Jianshan. He said with his ancient voice, Brother Jianshan, if you have the time in the future, you must come visit our Yubing clan. Jianshan returned the greeting with clasped hands. He planned on establishing himself in the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the future, so there was naturally no harm in befriending a few more overgods who belonged to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Afterwards, Ling Hogong introduced a few more overgods to Jianshan. They were all the people who had opened their eyes earlier. They all belonged to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianshan knew quite a few of the overgods already, so he understood that Ling Hogong was introducing them to him one by one to tie him to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. It was equivalent to forming a faction so that he could fend off the overgods from other divine kingdoms. This was because none of them wanted to see Duanmu, divine king's belongings, end up in the hands of other divine kingdoms. After all, Duanmu divine king's dwelling was within the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Brother Jianshan, I hope we can all work together when we fight for the treasures later on. Once we obtain the treasures, we'll split them according to our contributions. I wonder if Brother Jianshan is willing to join us? A voice that only the overgod from the divine kingdom of Pingtian could hear rang out in Jianshan's head. Jianshan knew that the speaker was a middle-aged man called Yang Kai. He was an overgod from the royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, and he was also the strongest overgod in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. He was a late overgod. Since Senior Yang Kai has spoken, how can I turn you down? Moreover, there are many overgods here. If we all fight for ourselves, we probably won't be able to obtain anything in the end. If we can work together, that'll naturally be for the best. Jianshan also replied secretly, agreeing to Yang Kai's suggestion. The overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian all beamed. They had already witnessed Jianshan's strength. Killing early overgods was no problem at all, and he could even threaten mid-overgods. He was much more powerful than many of them. With his participation, their strength would increase by a lot. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, a month had already passed since Master Chanlong began studying the formation. I've found the core of the formation. Everyone, it's up to you now. Master Chanlong's voice finally rang out after a month of studying the formation. All the overgods, including Jianshan, stood up when they heard that. They attacked the location Master Chanlong pointed at the same time. Jianshan could tell with a single glance that Master Chanlong's method of getting through the formation was completely different from Fairy Haoyue. The weakness that Fairy Haoyue pointed out was the weakest part of the formation. It would constantly shift as the formation operated, while the weakness that Master Chanlong found was the core of the formation. It was basically fixed there, never moving at all. Under the attacks of over 60 overgods, the formation collapsed very quickly. Although the divine King Duanmu was powerful, he only possessed extraordinary mastery over the laws of space and the sword. His mastery over formations was not great either. Although the formations he cast down had reached the level of the divine King Duanmu, they were of a lower level. Now that Master Chanlong was present and there were over 60 overgods, getting through the divine King Duanmu's formations was naturally nothing difficult. Afterwards, they got through formation after formation. In just a year, they arrived in the depths of the dwelling where the divine King Duanmu cultivated. Chapter 1752. The divine King Duanmu's dwelling seemed extremely simple. It was not overly ostentatious, nor were there extravagant decorations. There were only 3 stone huts that seemed extremely ordinary. Aside from that, there was nothing else. It was very difficult to imagine that this was the dwelling of a divine king, let alone a supreme divine king. This was because everything seemed just too ordinary. It was even worse than some of the smaller clans that only had gods. There were only 3 stone huts that stood alone in the dwelling of a mighty divine king. This clearly surprised the overgods. In their eyes, the divine King Duanmu's dwelling would naturally be majestic and resplendent with treasures everywhere as a supreme divine king. However, there were only 3 stone huts before them. The stone huts were constructed from the most ordinary materials in the saint's world. They were not particularly precious. Time had already left behind indelible marks on them, and they were not protected by any formations either. Is this really where the divine King Duanmu cultivates? Have we come to the wrong place? An early overgod asked from the crowd. He was the ancestor of a large clan in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He was not the only one who had such doubts. All the overgods present had the same thought. The dwelling of the divine King Duanmu was just too shabby. It was even worse than theirs. It was very difficult to believe that the mighty divine King Duanmu would actually cultivate in a place like this. Master Chanlong looked around and said, "This is already the very depths of the dwelling. This must be where the divine King Duanmu lives. It can't be wrong." Master Chanlong had played a huge role along the way. Without him, the overgods would not have been able to enter the dwelling at all. As a result, Master Chanlong had already become a person of great prestige among the overgods. Every single word and action of his carried great weight. Without a doubt, he had confirmed that the 3 stone huts were where the divine King Duanmu cultivated. The light in the eyes of many of the overgods flickered. They looked around cautiously as the senses of their souls flooded the surroundings, enveloping the entire space. Although they were unable to penetrate the stone huts, they were able to confirm that there were no formations here. All the overgods became restless. They looked at the 3 stone huts with burning interest, but none of them dared to take action. Instead, they all looked at Master Chanlong cautiously. This was because they understood that although they had not sensed the existence of formations, there was no guarantee that there were no hidden formations that they could not sense. Master Chanlong did not move, so they did not dare to move either. Master Chanlong closed his eyes. The 8 trigrams disc in his hand shone with black and white light as a huge Taiji diagram revolved around him. Mysterious inscriptions flickered around him. A while later, Master Chanlong opened his eyes. Excitement flashed through his eyes. Even though he hid it very quickly, all the overgods present paid attention to his every move at all times. Naturally, he was unable to hide his sudden change from them. "Everyone, please wait for a moment. Please allow me to explore the path ahead. I'll lead the way," Master Chanlong said to everyone like nothing had happened. The 8 trigrams disc hovered above his head and shone with resplendent light. Afterwards, Master Chanlong took the lead. The overgods followed closely behind Master Chanlong as the light in their eyes flickered. At this moment, Master Chanlong suddenly sped up. He turned into a blur as he charged towards the first stone hut. Every single action of Master Chanlong's affected everyone. When they saw Master Chanlong suddenly speed up, a gleam of light flashed through the eyes of the overgods behind him. Without any hesitation, they sped up as well, turning into blurs as they charged towards the first stone hut as quickly as they could. Jianshun was no exception. He was about to charge towards the first stone hut as well, but as soon as he moved, Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out in his head. "Don't go." It was just a short word, but it made Jianshun shiver inside. As he watched the overgods and the surroundings charge towards the first stone hut one by one, he stopped without any hesitation. At the same time, he communicated with Ling Hogong and the other overgods secretly. Ling Hogong and the other overgods were all stunned when they heard Jinshin's message. Ling Hogong immediately stopped, while the other overgods did not listen to Jinshin and stop immediately. However, they did slow down slightly. Just as everyone was about to charge into the first stone hut, Master Chanlong, who was at the very front, smiled. He came to a sudden halt before retreating even faster. It was also at this moment that space cracked open silently. A huge streak of light that was several dozen meters long emerged, cleaving down towards everyone with surging sword chi. The sudden change in situation caused the expressions of all the overgods to change drastically. They could no longer be bothered to curse Master Chanlong for being devious. All of them stopped and retreated even faster. Not everyone managed to escape. Over a dozen overgods were trapped by the sword chi, having been immobilized by the powerful sword intent. They were unable to retreat as they faced the sword chi. All they could do was endure it forcefully. The overgods were all battle-hardened. They all bellowed out at the same time and used their full strength to attack the sword chi. They tried to disperse the sword chi by combining their strength. However, the sword chi had been left behind by the supreme, divine King Duanmu when he was still alive. It was so powerful that even divine kings struggled to endure it, let alone overgods like them. The huge sword chi destroyed the full-powered attack from over a dozen overgods in an unstoppable manner. It slashed down as a resplendent streak of light. A total of 8 overgods had been reduced to ashes silently. Even their flesh and blood had disappeared. The other overgods stood near the edge of the sword chi, so they were not directly struck by the sword chi. They managed to survive out of luck. However, even with that being the case, they all vomited blood. They were heavily injured, and 3 of them only had a small portion of their bodies left. They were extremely heavily injured. Master Chanlong, you're despicable. The overgods who managed to survive became furious. They all cursed at Master Chanlong before immediately ingesting a large number of healing pills to recover. Chapter 1753. Master Chanlong sighed and said sorrowfully, I didn't sense that the divine King Duanmu had actually left something like that behind. If I hadn't reacted in time, I probably would have died to the sword chi as well. I'm deeply sorry for what has happened to the others. Master Chanlong, I think you just want to kill all of us here so that you can enjoy the divine King Duanmu's legacy for yourself, Yang Kai said coldly. He was a late overgod, so he did not fear Master Chanlong at all. Master Chanlong said innocently, You've all misunderstood me. That's not what I meant at all. Moreover, I've said before that I was only scouting ahead. I didn't say it would be safe. You were the ones who followed me. The overgods were momentarily at a loss for words when they heard that. Master Chanlong was indeed telling the truth. They were the only ones to blame. However, everyone's attitude towards Master Chanlong changed slightly after what had happened this time. They all became cautious and no longer trusted him as much as before. Master Chanlong did not care about this at all. The temptation of what the divine King Duanmu had left behind was just too great. His reputation was nothing compared to that. Brother Jinshin, thank you. Ling Hogong's grateful voice rang out in Jinshin's head. Afterwards, the other overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian expressed their gratitude to Jinshin as well. If it were not for Jinshin's warning, they might have been one of the people who had died to the strand of sword chi. Brother Jinshin, how did you know there would be danger up ahead? Yang Kai asked secretly. Senior Yang Kai thinks too highly of me. How would I know there would be danger up ahead? I just felt like entering the 3 stone huts was a little too simple, Jinshin replied. Naturally, the other overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian heard what Jinshin said. Sigh. It's still Brother Jinshin who's calm. We were a little too rash before. We failed to resist the temptation of the treasures left behind by the divine King Duanmu. Our greed disturbed our vigilance, being Lu sighed gently. They clearly understood Jinshin's logic. They had all been tempted by the treasures in the stone huts before. Coupled with the provocation from the overgods and the surroundings, they had lost their usual composure. Jinshin said nothing. Instead, He stared at where the sword chi had landed sternly. His heart was in turmoil. He had personally witnessed the 8 overgods as being reduced to nothingness under the sword chi that was enough to cause everyone's expressions to change. Not even their space rings behind. The only reason why the other overgods had managed to survive was because they were near the edge. They had not been struck directly by the sword chi, or they would have died as well. Is this the Divine King's strength? Even Duanmu, who hasn't made it onto the Divine King's throne, is so powerful. Just how terrifying are Aladona and Protector Shui, the strongest Divine King among the Divine King's throne? Jianshan thought. He could not help but think of Aladona and Protector Shui he had met on the Tian Yuan continent. The two of them were experts who had made it onto the Divine King's throne. They were much more powerful than Duanmu. In particular, Protector Shui ranked 9th on the Divine King's throne. In the past, Jianshan found Aladona and Protector Shui to be unfathomable when he faced them. Even though he knew that they were at the level of the Divine King, he had no idea how powerful the Divine King was. Only now did he truly understand just how terrifying Aladona and Protector Shui were when he compared them to Duanmu's sword chi. In his eyes, overgods were already experts who could reign over an entire region. There were only around a dozen overgods in a divine kingdom, yet they were so fragile before the Divine King's sword chi. Calling them ants was not an exaggeration at all. "Everyone, I'm going to continue scouting," said Jianshan at this moment. The inscriptions on the disc in his hand flickered rapidly before it hovered before Master Chanlong. Master Chanlong stared at the disc as he formed seals with his hands. He made his way towards the stone huts as he studied. Due to the lesson from before, no one trusted Master Chanlong as much as before. As a result, no one followed Master Chanlong when they saw Master Chanlong scout. They were afraid that Master Chanlong would set them up again. After all, no one here could match Master Chanlong in terms of formations. If Master Chanlong really wanted to use the formations here to deal with them, it would be very difficult for them to sense it. Under everyone's gazes, Master Chanlong drew closer and closer to the first stone hut. When Master Chanlong arrived where he had been before, there was no sword chi hidden in the air. Clearly, there was only one strand of sword chi from before. In the end, Master Chanlong arrived before the stone hut successfully. He slowly placed his hand on the stone door, and with a gentle push, the stone door immediately opened. Master Chanlong beamed as he entered in a flash. "He's gone, and just like that." The several dozen overgods outside were stunned when they saw Master Chanlong vanish from the stone hut. They struggled to believe that Master Chanlong had entered the stone hut so easily. However, they returned to their senses soon after. Without any hesitation, they all charged into the stone hut. This time, they did not encounter any obstructions. Clearly, there was only one strand of sword chi from before. Jianshan, Ling Hogong, and the other overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian entered the stone hut as well. When Jianshan entered the stone hut, the landscape before him suddenly changed. He had already appeared in an extremely large space. Around him were the several dozen overgods who had entered the stone hut before him. Although the stone hut only seemed to be around a dozen square meters wide from the outside, the divine King Duanmu had clearly modified the inside with the laws of space. It was a completely different world. "That's liquid rock." Suddenly, someone cried out. In front of everyone, at a position close to the mountain rock, there was a small pit that was only the size of a wash basin. It was filled with a pool of milky white liquid that emitted a refreshing fragrance. It really is stalactite milk. For divine crystal experts, stalactite milk has the effect of purifying impurities in their bodies and condensing their origin energy. It can also suppress all kinds of pill toxins and remove the resistance formed by consuming large amounts of heavenly and earthly treasures. It's extremely precious. That's not all. If you use liquid rock on people below godhood, just a single droplet will be enough for them to undergo a complete transformation. It can also increase their ability to comprehend, allowing them to comprehend the laws of the world much more easily. The effects of a stalactite are not limited to those below deities. It's still effective even to overgods. Some high-quality stalactite can even help god kings to a certain extent. Its value is immeasurable. The only flaw is that the effects of a stalactite are only temporary. Once the effects wear off, the effects of a stalactite will return to normal. There's such a large basin of liquid rock here. There's over 1,000 droplets at the very least. Like I said, how can a mighty divine, King Duanmu, be so stingy? The appearance of the basin of liquid rock caused the eyes of all the overgods present to turn red. Afterwards, they all charged overexcitedly. Before they had even arrived, they had already taken out various jade bottles to store the liquid rock. Everyone wanted liquid rock, but at the same time, none of them wished for someone else to obtain it first. The people at the very front naturally became the targets of everyone behind them. Chapter 1754. The expression of the late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind at the very front changed drastically. Even though he was one of the few late overgods in the group, he would probably become heavily injured if he had to face the attacks of several dozen experts at the same time. He might even die here. This was because a few of the attacks came from other late overgods. The liquid rock was precious, but no matter how precious it was insignificant compared to his life. At that moment, the person who had comprehended the laws of wind had also comprehended the laws of wind. The late overgod at the very front did not hesitate at all. He immediately gave up on the idea of taking the liquid rock. With a single movement, he left behind an afterimage where he was appearing several hundred meters away, dodging the attacks. With his departure, the people at the very front became Yang Kai, Master Chanlong, and the 5 other late overgods. The 7 of them basically moved at the same time, charging towards the liquid rock with lightning speed. The liquid rock was effective on overgods as well. What truly caught their attention was the liquid rock's ability to increase comprehension. This was because an increase in comprehension would be extremely beneficial to comprehending the laws of the world, allowing them to achieve twice the results with half the effort. If they were lucky, they might even be able to use it to reach the level of the Divine King. It was just that stalactite milk was very rare, and its price was extremely high. Almost all of them were monopolized by those large clans and sects that were far more powerful than them, so it was very difficult for them to buy it. At this moment, such a large basin of stalactite milk had appeared here, so they were naturally very moved. In their eyes, the liquid rock was an opportunity for them to reach the level of the Divine King. Even though the chances were very slim, it was still fatally attractive to them. Powerful origin energy and pulses of laws wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The several dozen mid and early overgods behind all struck out at that moment as well. They sent powerful attacks towards the 7 late overgods at the very front in an attempt to stop them. Ling Tianho struck out as well. He swung his sword and sent out a huge sword chi that directly shot towards Master Chanlong. The situation was chaotic. At a moment like this, no one cared about whether you were a mid or a late overgod. All they cared about was the great benefits and the temptation of the liquid rock. The 7 overgods at the very front all used their protective treasures to block the attacks from behind. They did not slow down at all and instead sped up. A formation disc appeared above Master Chanlong's head. It was immediately activated, forming a powerful defensive formation that protected him. The formation continued to envelop him, moving with him. With a string of heavy sounds, the attacks from the several dozen overgods landed on the 7 late overgods at the very front, causing their protective treasures and formations to dim. Aside from Master Chanlong, the others all paled. Every single one of them had received attacks from several experts at the same level as them. Even with protective treasures, it was very difficult for them to remain unscathed. However, the 7 late overgods did not slow down at all after receiving the attack from behind. Instead, they converted the force of the attack into forward momentum, moving even faster. They arrived before the stone basin with the stalactites in a single instance. However, the basin was only the size of a wash basin, while there were 7 of them. It was impossible for the basin to hold so many people. As a result, in order for them to approach the basin and collect the liquid rock, they all struck out at the same time. They attacked the people beside them in an attempt to force back their competitors. When an overgod struck out, it caused a great disturbance. When the terrifying ripples of energy swept towards the stone basin with the stalactites, the ordinary stone basin immediately shattered. The milky white stalactites were blown into the air by the turbulent streams of energy, turning into over 100 balls of milky white liquid of various sizes. As the ripples of energy spread out, they scattered in all directions like flowers scattered by a goddess. Hurry up and grab the liquid rock. It belongs to whoever grabs it. Someone cried out. At that moment, no one paid any more attention to the late overgods. They all scattered in all directions as their eyes burned with desire. They chased after the scattered stalactites as quickly as they could. Various jade bottles appeared in their hands as well. The late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind was the fastest. No one could match him in terms of speed. In the blink of an eye, he collected 3 balls of liquid rock, which amounted to over 20 droplets. Jianchen looked around as well, and his eyes narrowed very soon. He was overjoyed. 2 balls of liquid rock, one large and one small, flew straight towards him. 3 overgods rapidly approached the 2 balls of liquid rock from behind. To no surprise, their targets were the 2 balls of liquid rock as well. Jianchen charged over without any hesitation. He pushed his speed to the limit, and with a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared. He directly sucked the 2 balls of liquid rock into it. The eyes of the 3 overgods who originally wanted to collect the 2 balls of liquid rock turned cold. They glared at Jianchen, but they did not collect the other balls of liquid rock. Instead, they continued in the same direction, directly surrounding Jianchen. They had their eyes on the larger ball of liquid rock that Jianchen had collected. Just that one ball was equivalent to 4 or 5 balls of liquid rock. A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes when he sensed their actions. With a thought, 2 strands of profound sword chi immediately appeared, radiating with surging sword chi. The sword chi was so powerful that all the overgods present raised their eyebrows. They looked at Jianchen with a sliver of fear. It had already been a year since Jianchen last used the profound sword chi. During that year, the power of Jianchen's soul had recovered to its peak, so he could use the 2 strands of profound sword chi again. With the appearance of the profound sword chi, the expressions of the 3 overgods who charged towards Jianchen suddenly changed. They all came to a halt as fear filled their eyes. 2 of the 3 overgods were early overgods, while 1 was a mid-overgod. However, as Jianchen used the profound sword chi, they no longer dared to approach Jianchen. Jianchen did not shoot out the profound sword chi. Instead, he tossed it above his head to deter the people in the surroundings. Afterwards, he clasped his hands at the 3 overgods and said, I only want these 2 balls of liquid rock. There's still some liquid rock in the surroundings that hasn't been collected. If you keep wasting time here, you might end up empty-handed. The 3 overgods secretly weighed the pros and cons. In the end, they did not take the risk of stealing from Jianchen. They split up and went to collect the remaining liquid rock in the surroundings. In just a few seconds, the basin of liquid rock had been emptied out. Naturally, the late overgods had collected the most. In particular, the late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind seemed to have collected around 50 droplets. Of course, not everyone benefited. There were still a few weaker overgods who were empty-handed. They failed to collect a single droplet, and they were even heavily injured when they fought for the liquid rock. Their faces were pale right now. The overgods who had been injured by God King Duanmu's sword chi were still injured, so they ended up empty-handed when they fought for the stalactites. Their faces were all extremely sunken. Jianchen stowed the jade bottle of liquid rock away in satisfaction. Although he had not obtained a lot of liquid rock, he was still very satisfied with around 20 droplets. He understood that the only way he could deal with overgods was with profound sword chi. If he shot out both strands of profound sword chi, he would not be the overgod's opponent at all. It was already quite impressive for him to be able to collect around 20 droplets. Chapter 1755. After all the stalactites were taken away, everyone dispersed. They began to search for their own fortuitous encounters, searching every inch of the world. The overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian also dispersed in groups of 2s and 3s, heading off in different directions. However, Ling Hogong took the initiative to walk with Jianshan, discussing the way of the sword with him. Jianshan and Ling Hogong discussed their cultivation experiences as they searched for the depths of the space. Although they both possessed the senses of their souls, there were some things that could evade the senses of their souls. They could only be discovered when they were close enough. Boom! At this moment, a rumble rang out in the distance. An intense battle had already erupted there. Over a dozen overgods fought, and more people joined in. There were even 3 late overgods who fought in an earth-shattering manner. It's the Chaotic Heavens sword style. Someone has obtained the Chaotic Heavens sword style. Vaguely, there was an explosive roar that came from afar, accompanied by a deafening roar. The Chaotic Heavens sword style? Jianshan murmured. Clearly, this was the first time he had heard of it. However, a gleam of light flashed through Ling Hogong's eyes. He became slightly covetous as he said, "The Chaotic Heavens sword style is the cultivation method that the Divine King Duanmu practiced. The Divine King even used it to comprehend the way of the sword. It's not just the cultivation method. It also records various sword techniques with astonishing power. It's said that the Chaotic Heavens sword style was created by a primordial realm expert. I never thought it would appear here." As they spoke, the battle in the distance became more and more intense. 5 late overgods had already taken part, including Yongkai from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. For the sake of obtaining the Chaotic Heavens sword style, they fought in an earth-shattering manner. Many people were bloodied and heavily injured. Originally, a mid-overgod had obtained the Chaotic Heavens sword style, but he immediately faced the combined attacks of 5 late overgods. In the end, the mid-overgod directly died there. His soul was wiped out, and the Chaotic Heavens sword style ended up in the hands of a late overgod. However, as soon as the late overgod obtained the Chaotic Heavens sword style, he was surrounded by everyone and became heavily injured in a single instance. In the end, he tossed out several defensive formation discs and blew up his weapon before breaking out of the encirclement. He fled with his heavy injuries. Suddenly, an azure figure shot over from afar. It moved extremely quickly, catching up to the late overgod with the Chaotic Heavens sword style in a single instance. While he was unprepared, it directly impaled his head before grabbing the Chaotic Heavens sword style and fleeing. It left the miniature world in the blink of an eye, preventing the other late overgods from catching up. Ayo Tong, when you get out, don't even think about having peace. Someone bellowed from behind, full of unwillingness. To no surprise, the person who had taken the Chaotic Heavens sword style was the late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind. Jianshan was shocked when he saw this from afar. A late overgod had actually died just like that. This was the first late overgod to die in the Divine King's dwelling. At this moment, the world began to shake violently. The sky collapsed and the ground cracked. Violent laws of space wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing the world to shake violently. The space in the distance was reduced to nothingness at a visible rate. The space there actually vanished, as if it had been devoured by a terrifying beast. It was a shocking sight. Oh no, the world is about to collapse. This world has existed for far too long. Without the support of the Divine King's laws of space, it can't endure the attacks at all. Flee, or it'll be reduced to nothingness like the space here. It'll be difficult to escape death, the overgods all cried out. They all flew towards the exit as quickly as they could. Jianshan and Ling Hogong fled as quickly as they could as well. They made their way towards the exit as quickly as they could. Large swathes of space collapsed behind them, reduced to nothingness. Spatial cracks filled the surroundings. It was extremely terrifying. The space collapsed extremely quickly. It basically tailed behind Jianshan and Ling Hogong. If the two of them had been slightly slower, they would have been devoured mercilessly. Further away, two early overgods were further away from the exit. Coupled with the fact that they flew rather slowly, they directly vanished into the collapsed space under Jianchen and Ling Hogong's gazes. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Jianchen and Ling Hogong secretly gritted their teeth. They had already pushed their speed to the limit. They seemed to have turned into a faint blur as they charged towards the exit quickly. Jianchen was secretly prepared to use the linear lightning release at any time. Fortunately, the two of them arrived at the exit safely in the end. They entered in a single instance and vanished from the collapsed world. Outside of the 3 stone houses, only 2 were left. The first stone house had already turned into a pile of ashes. A few more overgods gathered outside the hut had been reduced as well. Aside from the mid and late overgods who had died in the battle for the chaotic heaven sword style, there were 4 other overgods who had failed to escape from the collapsed space and time. Their whereabouts were unknown. Ao Tong really isn't outside. It looks like he's left Divine King Duanmu's dwelling with the chaotic heavens sword style. A deep voice rang out. It came from a late overgod who had taken part in the battle for the chaotic heavens sword style. It's his fault for comprehending the laws of wind. If he wants to leave, we really can't stop him, Yang Kai added as well. His face was extremely sunken. It was said that the chaotic heavens sword style had been created by a primordial realm expert. It was an unimaginable treasure to these overgods. It was enough to affect the future of their clans, so all of them wanted it. At this moment, a heavy smell of blood suddenly appeared, causing the overgods who had just emerged from the first hut to frown. When they looked in the direction of the smell, they saw that over 100 corpses had already littered the second and third huts. The corpses were incomplete, and all of them had died in extremely miserable states. They had either lost half of their bodies or their heads. However, the missing parts of their bodies seemed to have vanished in a thin air. They were nowhere to be found. These heavenly deities are truly daring, said an overgod coldly when he saw that. The corpses lying on the ground were all heavenly gods. These heavenly gods took advantage of the time when they entered the first stone hut to boldly enter the second and third stone huts. Chapter 1756. This time, no one doubted Master Chanlong because the handprints on the stone door clearly indicated that someone had entered. Perhaps the killing move that the Divine King had cast down here could only be used once. The first stone hut was the best example. The remaining overgods all entered the second stone hut. The second stone hut also possessed a space within. It had been modified by the Divine King with the laws of space, so it was much larger than the first hut. This space was covered by mountains. As far as the eye could see, it was an endless mountain range. Sharp sword chi was emitted from the mountain range, bringing with it an aura of supremacy. It was extremely powerful. Between the endless mountains were a few stone walls that were as smooth as mirrors. The stone walls were covered with slashes, and the sharp sword chi that filled the world originated from slashes. The sharpness was enough to make all the overgods present shiver in fear. There were already a few gods standing in groups of 2s and 3s in front of some of the slashed walls. They stared at the slashes, wanting to comprehend the way of the sword within. A series of rumbling sounds rang out, only to see that in front, a few heavenly deities had already been hacked at the mountain peak here, wanting to peel off the sword scars and bring them away. However, the mountain here had been contaminated by the sword chi for many years, so it had already undergone a qualitative transformation. It was abnormally tough. Even with their full strength, they could only leave a mark on it. It was basically impossible to cut off the mountain and take it away. This should be where the Divine King comprehended the sword chi, said Ling Hogong. Ling Hogong said. His eyes were filled with excitement. This place was basically a supreme land of treasure to him. This was because he comprehended the laws of the sword. If he comprehended the laws of the sword here, he would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. The light in Jianchen's eyes flickered as well. He was excited. The slashes contained the Divine King's comprehension of the laws of the sword, so they would be of great help to him. They could assist him in increasing his comprehension of the laws of the sword, allowing him to reach the partial achievement of sword spirit in an even shorter amount of time. The overgods retreated very quickly. They had already scouted everything here. This was only a place where God King Duanmu comprehended the sword. It was of no use to them at all, nor were there any treasures left behind. Naturally, they were not interested in this place. In the blink of an eye, all the overgods had retreated aside from Jianshun and Ling Tianho. Jianshun, we both comprehend the laws of the sword, so this place is basically a paradise for us. Why don't we cultivate here for a while? Ling Hogong said. He already had thoughts of staying here. Jianshun, leave immediately and go to the third hut. If I've guessed correctly, there's what I need in there. At this moment, Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out in Jianshun's head. Jianshun clasped his fist at Ling Tianho without any change in his expression. He said, there's only one left out of the 3 huts. There might be some impressive treasures in there, so I plan on trying my luck and seeing if I can find anything. Ling Hogong clasped his fist at Jianshun and said, I won't be going to the 3rd hut. I'll be cultivating here for a while. I hope my laws of the sword will improve. Jianshun, good luck. Jianshun left after bidding farewell to Ling Hogong. He looked at the 3rd hut. The corpses of gods littered the ground outside the 3rd hut. Every single one of them had been dismembered, and they had died horrible deaths. Jianshun glanced past the corpses casually. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed, and his gaze landed on a person's face. He just happened to recognize the dead god. He was the mid-god from the Wainer clan who had hurried over when he, Mo Ling, and Ando Fu opened the Divine King's dwelling. There was a second person that Jianshun was familiar with lying nearby. It was the second mid-god from the Wainer clan. I never thought that 2 mid-god from the Wainer clan would die here. Jianshun sighed inside. He felt great pity. Afterwards, he made his way past the corpses and entered the 3rd hut. The 3rd hut was much smaller than the first 2 huts. When Jianshun entered, he discovered that all the overgods had stopped there. They all stared ahead with mixed feelings. Jianshun followed their gazes, and his eyes narrowed suddenly. His expression immediately became mixed as well. There was admiration and pity. Before them, there was a middle-aged man in green robes. His eyes were closed as he sat on a jade pedestal quietly. Although invisible sword chi vaguely radiated from him, making him seem like he was supreme, he was completely lifeless. The divine King Duanmu. Jianshun was filled with mixed feelings when he saw the middle-aged man. The divine King Duanmu was a peak expert who had made it onto the divine king's throne. Even though he was not ranked among the divine kings, his strength was enough to shock the world. There were very few people who were his opponent in the divine king's realm, yet now such a great expert had died in his own dwelling. Moreover, the reason why his laws of the sword had reached sword spirit was all thanks to the divine King Duanmu's assistance. If it were not for the sword slash that the divine King Duanmu had left behind in his disciples' dwelling, it would have been impossible for him to reach sword spirit so easily. I never thought that the 3rd hut would actually be where the divine King Duanmu sleeps. Master Chanlong looked at the lifeless divine King Duanmu with mixed feelings. He sighed gently in pity. The divine King Duanmu was extremely powerful. Probably only the experts who made it onto the divine king's throne could defeat him, but they would only be able to defeat him. The divine King Duanmu had grasped the way of space. If he wanted to escape, he would be even faster than the laws of wind. Killing him would be even more difficult. The divine King Duanmu is so powerful. So who killed him? Was it one of the peak experts who stood before the divine king? Or was it a primordial realm expert? If a primordial realm expert took action, it would indeed be very difficult for the divine King Duanmu to escape. What a pity. What a pity. If the divine King Duanmu didn't die, there would be a very great chance for him to reach the primordial realm in the future. He would stand above the clouds, above the 9 heavens. A few of the overgods sighed. Their gazes towards the divine King Duanmu were filled with admiration. This was admiration for the strong. Even though the divine King Duanmu was already dead, the fame he had left behind still affected them. There seems to be a small line of words beside the divine King Duanmu. An over-god suddenly said in surprise. Everyone looked over, and sure enough, they discovered a line of words carved into the ground. Since you've made it here, it's fate. If you want my legacy, you must swear to the laws of the world that you must personally kill the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan. If you succeed in cultivation in the future, the expressions of all the over-gods changed again and again when they saw the line of words. In particular, when they saw the words heavenly demon religion, all of their faces became filled with fear as if they were extremely fearful of the heavenly demon religion. Chapter 1757. Jianshan murmured inside when he saw everyone's expressions. Although he had never heard of the heavenly demon religion, the heavenly demon religion was probably an impressive organization from the reactions of the overgods present. At that moment, the surroundings fell into a strange silence. All the overgods looked at the group of people before the divine king. The light in their eyes flickered as they became uneasy. Even further away, there were still some Empyrean gods gathered there. They were all people who had arrived here before the master gods. However, ever since the several dozen overgods entered the third stone hut, the people who were only gods retreated far away. They did not dare to approach the hut at all. A while later, an overgod finally sighed gently. I never thought that the divine King Duanmu would actually die to the hands of the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan. Moreover, if you want Duanmu Divine King's legacy, you have to defy the laws of the world and become enemies with the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion. Another overgod shook his head as well. He said gently, if that's the case, as long as you obtain the divine King Duanmu's legacy, you'll be hunted down by the heavenly demon religion. Who would be bold enough to take the legacy? I'd rather not obtain the divine King Duanmu's legacy than become enemies with the heavenly demon religion, as that would only lead to death. The heavenly demon religion is just too terrifying. It's not something we can provoke. All the overgods sighed. They were filled with pity. All of them feared the heavenly demon religion very much. They did not dare to accept the divine King Duanmu's legacy at all. Do we have to become enemies with the heavenly demon religion to obtain the divine King Duanmu's legacy? The divine King Duanmu is already dead anyway. Can't we take the legacy from a dead person with our strength as overgods? A middle-aged man in red robes spoke. Clearly, he wanted to go against the rules that the divine King Duanmu had set down before he died and use force. The light in the eyes of many overgods immediately flickered when they heard what the person had said. Clearly, they were rather tempted. The divine King Duanmu was indeed admirable when he was alive, but the rules he set down were just too difficult. Basically, no one dared to agree to it. Instead of leaving the divine King Duanmu's legacy here, why don't we take the legacy with us and leave it here? Why don't we take him out with us so that he can continue to flourish and make a name for himself in the saints' world? Perhaps there really is a sliver of hope for him to avenge God King Duanmu in the future. With that, he took out a low-quality saint artifact flying sword from his space ring. He bowed towards the divine King Duanmu's corpse politely and said sternly, "Duanmu Divine King, forgive me." The old man shot out the low-quality saint artifact in his hand. Swish! The low-quality saint artifact directly shot towards the divine King Duanmu's corpse as a silver streak of light. The light in the eyes of all the overgods present shone brightly as they stared at the flying sword. At the same time, they secretly accumulated power. Once they confirmed that there was no danger, they would charge over as quickly as they could. The flying sword moved extremely quickly, arriving 3 meters away from the divine King Duanmu in a single instance. However, it was also at this moment that a terrifying power of laws suddenly appeared. It formed a huge barrier of light that enveloped the corpse. When the low-quality saint artifact came in contact with the power of laws, it actually shattered silently. At the same time, the divine King Duanmu's corpse became fainter and fainter under the power of laws. His corpse changed drastically at that moment as well. The green-robed, middle-aged man had vanished. To no surprise, all that remained was a set of white bones. There was a space ring on one of his fingers, and there was a pearl the size of a pigeon's egg in his head. It flickered with dim, golden light. The divine King Duanmu had already been dead for several 100,000 years. His body had already rotted away. He had only used an ability to preserve an image of himself before he died. Once the ability was destroyed, the true state of his corpse would naturally be exposed. The power of laws that had suddenly appeared had clearly destroyed the image of the divine King Duanmu. A golden core of laws. It's a golden core of laws. The expressions of all the overgods changed the moment they saw the pearl. They could not help but cry out. They were extremely shocked. As for the interspatial ring, no one paid any attention to it, because it was within their expectations. A golden core of laws. It said that only when one's comprehension of the laws of the world has reached an extremely deep level can they condense a golden core of laws. At the same time, a golden core of laws is the symbol of a primordial realm expert. I never thought that the divine King Duanmu would actually condense a golden core of laws. Doesn't that mean he's broken through the divine king realm and reached the primordial realm? A few overgods said. They were not calm at all. No, the divine King Duanmu's golden core of laws is rather different. It said that the golden cores of primordial realm experts are extremely bright and dazzling, while the divine King Duanmu's golden core of laws is dim. It's even devoid of any golden light. Clearly, he's in the process of reaching the primordial realm from the divine king realm. He can only be described as having one foot in the primordial realm, while the other foot is still in the realm of the divine king, said Yonkai. All the overgods were very unsettled. None of them had thought that the divine King Duanmu would actually have half a foot in the primordial realm. As long as he made it through this process and completely condensed his golden core of laws, he would become a true primordial realm expert. But very soon, everyone was overwhelmed by the temptation of the divine king's legacy. They all began to attack the power of laws that protected the divine King Duanmu's remains. So what if he was a half-step primordial realm expert? He was already dead. He had been reduced to a skeleton. The power of laws was very powerful, enough to shatter a low-quality Saint artifact in a single instance. However, as long as they did not approach the power of laws would not be able to harm them, as they could already tell that the power of laws could only protect them. It would not actively attack them. The overgods all stood in the distance and sent out sword chi, or pillars of energy, to attack the power of laws. They wanted to whittle away the power of laws bit by bit. For a moment, terrifying ripples of energy swept through the surroundings as booms constantly rang out. In order to break through the protection of the power of laws, the overgods did not hold back at all. Fairy Haoyue, is there anything you need here? Jianshan did not attack the power of laws that protected the divine King Duanmu. Instead, he communicated with Fairy Haoyue. I never thought that Duanmu would have already broken through and condensed a golden core of laws. That has exceeded my expectations. What I need is right here. It's Duanmu's space ring. As a supreme divine king, it's impossible for his space ring to not have supreme-grade divine crystals. There might even be 5-colored divine crystals. Moreover, there's still some energy in the remains that hasn't dispersed. It'll still be helpful to me. Jianshan, I need you to create an opportunity for me to approach Duanmu's remains. Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out in Jianshan's head. At this moment, there was a flash of golden light, piercing the forehead of an overgod in a single instance. The early overgod died on the spot, wiping out his soul. After killing the first early overgod, the golden streak of light continued towards the second early overgod. However, the death of the first early overgod made everyone cautious. The second overgod immediately bellowed out as the power of laws surged. He directly swung his axe towards the golden light. Boom! Chapter 1758. All the overgods who surrounded God King Duanmu's power of law stopped. They all stared at the golden sword that hovered in the air as they became rather stern. With just a single flying sword, He had killed an early overgod and sent a second early overgod flying while vomiting blood. Even the late overgods became rather fearful of his strength. More importantly, they had no idea where the golden flying sword had come from. Jinshin also stared at the flying sword. He frowned and became slightly doubtful. He thought, why does this sword seem so familiar? Which fellow launched a sneak attack? Why don't you show yourself? Yang Kai called out. What sneak attack? You make it sound so horrible. Bao Bao killed you fair and square. A rather young voice rang out. All the overgods present were stunned when they heard the voice. Afterwards, they all turned their heads and stared at the golden sword in surprise. The reason for that was because the voice was clearly coming from the golden flying sword. It was also at this moment that a little girl suddenly appeared on the golden sword. Her body was illusionary, and she only seemed to be 4 or 5 years old. She was delicate and extremely cute, but her eyes were currently wide open as she stared at the overgods furiously. It's actually the sword spirit. Is this sword god king Duanmu's treasure? Bing Lu asked in surprise. Jinshin came to a realization as well. He had found the sword to be rather familiar earlier. Wasn't it the sword that the Divine King wielded? You have some insight. That's right. The Divine King is Bao Bao's master. Since you're unwilling to submit to the laws of the world, you obviously don't have the right to receive Master's legacy. Please leave immediately. If you continue to disturb the slumber of an overgod, don't blame Bao Bao for being impolite. Bao Bao will kill all of you, the sword spirit said coldly. Although she did not seem old, her childish voice was filled with killing intent. Clearly, the sword had been with the Divine King for countless years already. As the Divine King waged battles everywhere, it had naturally matured as well. Ha ha ha! You want to threaten us with a flying sword? What a joke! A late overgod sneered. A late overgod sneered and directly charged towards the golden sword. He reached towards the hilt in an attempt to subdue the sword. The other overgods moved at the same time as well. They all charged towards the golden flying sword as quickly as they could. This was God King Duanmu's treasure. To them, it was a treasure that could protect the fortune of their clans and protect them. Jinshin, it's extremely likely that Duanmu's Divine King's legacy is related to this flying sword. It might even be in the sword spirit's hands. If you want it, I'll take it for you once I recover my body. Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out. Fairy Haoyue, there's no hurry. Let's think of a way for you to approach the Divine King's remains first, Jinshin said. He was not tempted at all. He had come to the Divine King's dwelling this time, mainly for Fairy Haoyue. He also wanted to find some treasures useful to his cultivation so that he could break through with the chaotic body as soon as possible. The Divine King's legacy was just a few cultivation methods and battle skills. He cultivated the chaotic body, let alone the cultivation methods left behind by the Divine King. Even the cultivation methods of some primordial realm experts would not be enough. He would not be tempted at all. Battle skills were passed down to him by the sword spirits. Many of the battle skills had been created by the previous master of the sword spirits. He even possessed the peak god tier sword technique, the profound sword chi, so he naturally would not take the Divine King's sword technique seriously. On the other side, several dozen overgods had already begun fighting the golden flying sword. Although not all the overgods took part, close to 30 of them engaged in a fierce battle with the flying sword. The golden flying sword was controlled by the sword spirit after all. If it was a one-on-one battle, she would not fear any one of them. However, she could only avoid close to 30 overgods. She shot through the surroundings as a streak of light, dodging everyone's attacks and counterattacking from time to time. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the golden flying sword had completely lost the upper hand. It was completely dodging with its speed, dealing with close to 30 overgods. The shockwave from their battle are far too violent. I can't endure it as a soul. I need to find a way to stop their battle. Only then can I go outside, Fairy Haoyue said sternly. But the Divine King Duanmu's corpse is protected by a powerful layer of laws. How are you going to get past that? Jinshin asked with a frown. I can pay a small price to temporarily suppress the power of laws, but I'll need 10 seconds. Jianshun became stern when he heard Fairy Haoyue's words. He knew what Fairy Haoyue meant. She wanted him to buy 10 seconds for her. She could not be injured at all during that time. After all, she was just far too fragile as a soul. Even an Origin Realm expert could injure her heavily, let alone overgods who were countless times more powerful than Origin Realm experts. Although 10 seconds was a short amount of time, he would have to endure the attacks of many overgods. The overgods who had come would never allow Fairy Haoyue to approach the divine King Duanmu's corpse. Jianshun looked around and discovered that there were still over a dozen overgods who had not taken part in the battle for the golden flying sword. At the same time, the battle between the overgods and the golden flying sword had produced extremely terrifying ripples of energy. Even gods would struggle to gain a foothold there. It was not beneficial for Fairy Haoyue's soul to move about in such an environment. At this moment, the golden flying sword turned into a streak of golden light and vanished from the space in a single instance. It had fled outside. Clearly, it was no longer the opponent of over 30 overgods. The overgods did not give up either. They all chased after it. The divine King Duanmu's corpse was protected by the power of laws anyway, so no one could enter it. As a result, they were not worried that someone would use this opportunity to steal the divine King Duanmu's space ring after they left. In the blink of an eye, only Jianshun and the overgods who had not taken part in the battle remained in the space. These people were all early overgods, so they knew that it would be very difficult for them to obtain the flying sword before mid or late overgods. As a result, they saved up some strength to conserve their energy and prepare for the final battle. A good chance. Jianshun's eyes lit up. He knew that his chance had come, but he did not take action immediately. Instead, he said to the overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian secretly, Gohan Shui, Bing Lu, Feng Buell, I have something to discuss with you. Gohan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell were all early overgods, so they did not take part in the battle for the flying sword. Chapter 1759. Gohan Yin, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell all looked over when they heard Jianshun's message. They stared at Jianshun, who sat on the ground. Jianshun, feel free to tell us what you need to discuss with us. The hunchback Bing Lu smiled. Jianshun, what is it? Is it good or bad? Don't forget about me if it's something good. Gohan Yin chuckled. Gohan Yin giggled. From her tone, she seemed to be an old friend of Jianshun. Jianshun, tell us about it first. If it's within our abilities, we'll definitely assist you. Feng Buell replied as well. No one else knew about their conversation, but Bing Lu, Gohan Yin, and Feng Buell treated Jianshun rather politely. They did everything they could to befriend him. They did not want to miss out on any opportunity. In their opinion, Jianshun's cultivation was greatly lacking. If they really did fight, it would be impossible for him to defeat an early overgod with just the laws of the sword as an overgod. However, they knew even better that as long as Jianshun had some time, he would be able to recover his cultivation in an extremely short amount of time. Once his cultivation and comprehension of the laws of the sword reached the same level, there would be very few people who were his opponent at the same level of cultivation as him due to the strength of his laws of the sword. He might even become a second Ling Hogong, able to fight mid-overgods to a draw with his laws of the sword as an early overgod. If Jianshun's terrifying sword Qi, which could instantly kill early overgods, even mid-overgods might not be Jianshun's opponent. Bing Lu, Gohan Yin, and Gohan Yin would naturally try their best to befriend such an expert. They all believed that even if they could not become friends, it would be best if they did not become enemies. After a moment of thought, Jianshun said secretly, Bing Lu, Gohan Shui, Feng Buell, I hope you can help me keep the 3 early overgods busy as much as possible. Jianshun had found the 3 of them because he trusted them the most. Although there were a few other overgods who wanted to befriend him, Jianshun did not trust them, even if some of them came from the royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianshun did not dare to trust Yang Kai, who was a late overgod. Yang Kai was just too powerful, so he was even more worried. Keep the 3 early overgods busy? Jianshun, what are you trying to do? Gohan Shui asked in surprise. You'll naturally understand what I'm trying to do later. Anyway, it's extremely It's extremely likely that the over-gods here will attack me. You just need to keep the 3 over-gods busy for a few seconds. In return, I'll give each of you a soul recovery pill, said Jianshan said. What? A soul recovery pill? Bing Lu, Guhan Yin, and Feng Buell were all surprised when they heard about the soul recovery pill. Disbelief filled their faces. The soul recovery pill was an extremely precious pill. Just a single one could fully recover the power of an early over-god soul in a few seconds. It was extremely valuable, and it was impossible to buy it in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Aside from the soul recovery pill, I'll give each of you 2 droplets of stalactite. Moreover, Jianshan, will owe you a favor. All you need to do is keep the 3 early over-gods busy for a few seconds, said Jian Wushuang. In order to help Fairy Hao Yue approach the Divine King's corpse, Jianshan was willing to pay any price. All right, we agree. We'll keep the 3 over-gods busy for a few seconds, but there's nothing we can do for the other over-gods. After hesitating slightly, Bing Lu, Feng Buell, and Guhan Yin agreed. Although they could vaguely guess that Jianshan probably wanted the Divine King's corpse, they did not think too much about it. They understood that it was impossible for them to obtain the wealth and legacies in the Divine King's space ring. Even if they stopped Jianshan from obtaining them, they would still end up in the hands of the late over-gods in the end. It would be very difficult for them to obtain anything with their strength as early over-gods. If that were the case, it would be better for them to agree to Jianshan's suggestion. Not only would they be able to improve their relationship with Jianshan, but they would also be able to obtain some benefits from Jianshan. Of course, what they truly valued was the favor they owed Jianshan. Jianshan was extremely straightforward as well. He gave the 3 of them the soul recovery pills and the stalactites on the spot. Jianshan had obtained a total of 10 soul recovery pills. He gave one to Ando Fu and Mo Ling each, while he and Shan Jian each took 4 of the remaining 8. He had already consumed 2 of the 4 pills earlier, so he only had 2 left. As a result, he took 2 from Shan Jian out of the soul recovery pills that he had given to Guhan, and Mo Ling. He kept the remaining 1 as a backup. Although Jianshan could kill 6 early overgods with his profound sword chi if he used the 3 soul recovery pills well, the soul recovery pills required time to recover the power of the soul. Jianshan would not have enough time to recover in the upcoming battle. However, he needed Guhan Yin, and Guhan Yin to keep the 3 overgods busy. That would reduce the pressure on him. He only had soul recovery pills on him that could tempt overgods. As for the other pills, although they were quite valuable as well, they were nothing to overgods. In order to help Fairy Hao Yue condense a body successfully, Jianshan had invested quite a lot. So what if I lose a few soul recovery pills? Once Fairy Hao enters successfully and obtains the divine King Duanmu's space ring, I'll be able to recoup my losses 1,000 times over. At the same time, I might be able to break through successfully with my chaotic body, Jianshan thought as he comforted himself. The overgods who chased after the golden sword could return at any time, so Jianshan did not dare to waste any more time. He immediately released the bright moon divine hall from his space ring. As the doors opened, Fairy Hao Yue's illusionary figure slowly made her way out. Shen Jian walked out with her. The remaining overgods naturally noticed Jianshan's actions as well, but they did not pay too much attention to him. Jianshan immediately put the bright moon divine hall away as well. However, as soon as he put it away, Fairy Hao Yue's figure suddenly moved. She directly charged towards the power of laws that protected the divine King Duanmu. She's just a soul, yet she dares to covet what belongs to the divine King Duanmu. How reckless! Aside from Guhan Yin, and Guhan Yin, the other overgods all sneered disdainfully. However, what happened next left them dumbfounded. When Fairy Hao Yue approached the power of laws, she was not directly slain by the power as they had expected. Instead, her illusionary soul became extraordinarily bright at that moment, shining with white light. The light was like a white flame that burned Fairy Hao Yue's soul, causing it to dim at a visible rate. Her soul was enveloped by the flame-like light, slowly fusing with the power of laws. All the power of laws that approached Fairy Hayue shook gently before retreating slowly, as if they were afraid of approaching her at all. As for the shaking, it was only a scene that outsiders could see. In truth, this layer of law power was trembling in fear. At that moment, none of the overgods sensed an unimaginably tremendous, terrifying pressure radiating from Fairy Hayue. However, under Fairy Hayue's precise control, the pressure crushed towards the power of laws. This pressure seemed to have turned into the might of the heavens, completely overriding the power of the rules, causing the power of the rules to retreat. Chapter 1760. Not only were all the overgods stunned as they watched Fairy Hayue slowly enter the power of laws, but even Gohan, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell narrowed their eyes in disbelief. The layer of power that protected the Divine King's remains was at the level of a half-step primordial realm expert. Although the power of laws would not actively attack and could only protect, it did not mean that the power of laws could be approached so easily. If the power of laws approached, even most Divine Kings would become injured, let alone overgods. This was because the power of laws had surpassed the level of the Divine King. It was at the level of a half-step primordial realm expert. However, not only did Fairy Hayue not disintegrate when she approached the power of laws as a soul, but she even gradually fused with it. From the looks of it, it was very likely for her to pass through the power of laws. Naturally, all the overgods present were shocked by this. Jianshun, who is she? Gohan's voice rang out in Jianshun's head. Her voice was filled with shock. Who she is isn't important, but I can tell you that she's a supreme expert, Jianshun replied to Bing Lu, Feng Buell, and Feng Buell. The expressions of Bing Lu, Gohan, and Feng Buell all changed when they heard that. At the same time, a pill appeared in Shan Jian's hand. They had obtained this pill from the pill room of the Divine King's disciples' dwelling. It was called the Fire Cloud Pill, and it could temporarily increase one's cultivation by a minor level, ignoring the restrictions of the laws of the world. However, the price of consuming the pill was extremely great. No one would be willing to touch the Fire Cloud Pill unless it was a matter of life and death. Shan Jian ingested the Fire Cloud Pill without any hesitation. As soon as the pill reached his stomach, a powerful presence immediately radiated from Shan Jian. His cultivation skyrocketed at that moment, going from early god to mid-god in the blink of an eye. A Fire Cloud Pill appeared in Jianshun's hand as well. He thought, I hope the Fire Cloud Pill is effective on chaotic force as well. Afterwards, Jianshun ingested the Fire Cloud Pill without any hesitation. At that moment, he felt like his chaotic force was about to boil. Although his chaotic force had not reached the 10th layer, Jianshun could clearly sense that it flowed even more violently. It felt like it had gone berserk, and its power had clearly increased. Although the Fire Cloud Pill was good stuff, the price of consuming it was just too great. As a result, he did not give it to Gohan Yin and the others. Even if he did give it to them, they would not consume it right now. Oh no, the soul wants to take away what belongs to the Divine King. Stop her. Don't let her succeed. When Shan Jian and Jianshun ingested the Fire Cloud Pills, the overgods all returned to their senses. Light flickered through their eyes as they charged towards Fairy Hayue without any hesitation. Two of them even waved their hands and sent powerful origin energy towards Fairy Hayue. Bing Lu, Yu Feng Yin, Feng Buell, do it quick. You're assisting a peak expert. Once she reconstructs her body, you'll definitely benefit greatly. Jianshun said to Bing Lu and the others in a hurry. He arrived before Fairy Hayue in a flash, using his body as a shield to protect Fairy Hayue. At the same time, the flying snow sword appeared in his hand. He radiated with a soaring sword intent as he unleashed his comprehension of the laws of the sword spirit realm without holding back at all. He slashed out two powerful sword chis to disperse the incoming origin energy. Boom! The sword chi collided with the two strands of origin energy, erupting with powerful ripples of energy that wreaked havoc in all directions. Jinshin's feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as he stood there like a mountain. His body had turned into a tough shield. The powerful ripples of energy struck Jinshin, but Fairy Haoyue, who stood behind Jinshin, was naturally unaffected. At the same time, Bing Lu, Guhan Yin, and Feng Buell moved as well. They gritted their teeth and charged towards the overgods, keeping 3 of them busy. Aside from Jinshin, there were a total of 14 overgods gathered there. Feng Buell, Bing Lu, and Guhan Yin kept 3 overgods busy, so there were 8 overgods left. The 8 overgods all charged towards Jinshin, who protected Fairy Haoyue at that moment. All of them radiated with killing intent as their presences surged. Even though they feared Jinshin slightly, this fear had completely vanished before the divine King Duanmu's legacy. A will that splits the heavens, sword shakes, star shatters. Shun Jin bellowed out, and the cloud stream sword in his hand produced a ripple that rapidly expanded towards 2 of the overgods. Shun Jin's comprehension of the laws of the sword was at the great perfection of sword origin, which was equivalent to peak god. His cultivation had also risen from early god to mid-god under the amplification of the fire cloud pill, and the laws of the sword were one of the laws with the greatest offensive power. With such strength, it was enough to kill regular late gods. Even if it did not pose a threat to early overgods, it was enough to make them take him seriously. This was because apart from Ling Hogong, the laws that the other overgods comprehended were slightly weaker than the laws of the sword. Ling Hogong relied on the power of the laws of the sword to challenge those at a higher level of cultivation. He was able to fight mid-overgods to a stalemate even as an early overgod, let alone Shun Jian. The 2 early overgods' faces turned cold when they saw Shun Jian's ripple of energy. The ripple of energy was not enough to threaten them. It was only enough to make them take him seriously. A mere god dares to challenge an overgod. Your courage is praiseworthy, but you're just looking to die. The 2 early overgods sneered. They directly struck out with their hands, and origin energy and the power of laws surged, dispersing Shun Jian's ripple of energy. Afterwards, the 2 gods changed their direction of advance. They no longer charged towards Jinshin. Their eyes were cold as they charged towards Shun Jian with heavy killing intent. Shun Jian became extremely stern. Without a doubt, dealing with 2 overgods with his current strength was a great challenge. Fortunately, he only needed to last for 10 seconds. A will that splits the heavens, illusion of the sword finger. Suddenly, Shun Jian bellowed out. Specks of starlight suddenly flickered in his surroundings, forming an illusionary galaxy that radiated with a boundless presence. He seemed to have fused with the galaxy, becoming the god of the illusionary galaxy. As he stabbed out with his cloud-stream sword, the tremendous power of the galaxy immediately surged out. It collided with the 2 overgods with a boundless and ancient presence. The 2 early overgods became rather stern when they faced the power of the galaxy. At that moment, they actually sensed a sliver of threat at the same time, which left them extremely shocked. After all, they were facing a god right now. On the other side, Jinshin stood with the flying snow sword in his hand. A damaged set of armor had appeared on him. Chapter 1761. Jinshin, don't even think about taking the divine King Duanmu's legacy for yourself. Jinshin, move, or you'll die a horrible death today. The 6 early overgods who charged towards Jinshin called out coldly. They were all brimming with killing intent. Before they had even arrived, they had already sent strands of powerful energy towards Jinshin. Jinshin's damaged armor covered less than a third of his body. His robes fluttered without any wind, and his black hair danced wildly. A shocking sword intent radiated from him. The sword intent was so powerful that even the 6 overgods became stern. Sky-severing strike. Jinshin called out. He raised the flying snow sword above his head, and immediately a huge streak of light that was several hundred meters long condensed. With the fluttering snow in the air, the huge streak of light directly slashed down. As they swung down, the surrounding space seemed to freeze at that moment, forming a sword domain that enveloped the attacks from the 6 overgods. Boom! The two attacks collided and erupted with a great boom. The sword chi dispersed at the same time as the attacks from the 6 overgods. Terrifying ripples of energy shot out in all directions with the scattered sword chi, sweeping through the surroundings. Jinshin's body shook violently, and his face paled slightly. His organs churned like they were in a mess. However, his body remained straight like a tough shield, standing there without moving at all. He blocked the ripples of energy from up ahead and protected Fairy Haoyue. At the same time, 2 strands of profound sword chi appeared above his head. They shone with dazzling light as they surged into the sky, giving off a terrifying pressure. As soon as the profound sword chi appeared, the expressions of the 6 overgods who attacked Jinshin immediately changed. A smear of fear and deep fear appeared in their eyes. They had all personally witnessed the power of the profound sword chi. It could easily kill early overgods. Back off if you don't want to die, or don't blame me for being merciless, Jinshin bellowed out as his presence surged. He seemed like he could hold off 10,000 enemies all by himself. 2 seconds had already passed. The 6 overgods all looked at one another and hesitated. What's there to be afraid of? There are 6 of us. His secret technique is powerful, but I refuse to believe we can't stop him if we work together. Let's go together. Finally, the 6 overgods no longer hesitated after one of the early overgods called out coldly. They gathered together and looked after one another as they charged towards Jinshin quickly. A cold light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. With a thought, the strand of profound sword chi above his head immediately turned into a streak of white light, shooting out with lightning speed towards one of the overgods. The moment the profound sword chi shot out, the 6 overgods all came to a halt. They used their full strength to fend off the profound sword chi. Origin energy pulsed around them as the power of laws condensed into sharp swords. The profound sword chi was extremely powerful. However, the profound sword chi was just too fast, so fast that it had basically surpassed their reaction time. Even though they were already moving very quickly, they were nowhere near as fast as the profound sword chi. Before their attacks had even come into contact with the profound sword chi, the profound sword chi had already arrived before the forehead of one of the overgods. Spurt. Blood splattered as a bloody mark appeared on the forehead of one of the overgods. The profound sword chi had stabbed into the overgod's forehead without any obstructions, wiping out his soul. The attacks of the 5 other overgods struck Jinshin at the same time after failing to block the profound sword chi. Jinshin shuddered as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. For vicious wounds had appeared on his body as blood dyed his white robes red. As for the 5th attack, it landed on the damaged armor. The armor really was a god artifact, after all. Even though it was heavily damaged, it was extremely tough. It did not even leave behind a single mark after taking on an overgod's attack. However, the powerful force of the attack did not decrease at all when it struck Jinshin. Jinshin finally could not help but take a step back. However, the force of the impact from the armor was just too great. Clearly, a single step was not enough to disperse the force. Just when he was about to take a second step back, he suddenly gritted his teeth and stabbed the flying snow sword into the ground, forcefully stopping himself. However, this action made his wounds even worse. He vomited blood as soon as he opened his mouth. He could not retreat. If he took another step back, he would collide with Fairy Haoyue's soul. Jinshin wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth. Even though he was heavily injured, he did not seem weak at all. With a flip of his hand, he pulled out the 7th grade truth tier pill of revival he had obtained from the alchemy room and swallowed it along with a soul recovery pill. As the pill entered his stomach, his wounds immediately began to heal rapidly. Even his soul, which had been depleted from using the profound sword chi, began to recover rapidly as the effects of the soul recovery pill spread. At the same time, chaotic force circulated wildly within Jinshin. He pushed the advantage of the chaotic body to the limit, using every moment to heal as quickly as possible. Under the dual effects of the chaotic force and the healing pills, Jianshan's wounds immediately healed at an extremely shocking rate. It was so fast that any of the overgods present would have become utterly dumbfounded if they had seen it. Now 5 breaths had passed. By Hai's firmament. At this moment, a bellow rang out. One of the 5 overgods began to use a truth tier battle skill. An ocean appeared behind him, as if it had fused with the surroundings. It swept towards Jianshan with all the energy in the surroundings. Vulcan's finger. Another overgod began to use a battle skill. Flames surged from his body, condensing into a huge hand that extended towards Jianshan. Lightless darkness. Palm of destruction. Death's soul reaping slash. The 5 overgods all used truth tier battle skills. A terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings as 5 terrifying attacks swept towards Jianshan with devastating power. Jianshan became extremely stern. With a thought, he sent out a second strand of profound sword chi, which collided with the battle skills of the 5 overgods. The profound sword chi turned into a bolt of lightning and collided with the first strand of sword chi in a single moment. With a boom, the first battle skill was destroyed without any suspense, but the profound sword chi did not slow down at all. It continued to shoot towards the second, third, fourth, and 5th battle skills with surging sword chi. Boom, 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 boom. With a series of booms, the battle skills from the 5 overgods were all destroyed by the profound sword chi. However, the profound sword chi did not disperse. It flickered with a dim light as it directly charged towards an overgod like a fearless warrior. The overgod was extremely stern. He immediately bellowed out as his energy surged out. He wielded a huge scythe and used the power of laws to strike the profound sword chi as hard as he could. Clearly, he had put his life on the line to unleash that attack. Chapter 1762. After destroying the battle skills of 5 overgods, the profound sword chi had become much weaker. It no longer possessed the might it possessed in its peak state. In the end, it shattered under the scythe, dispersing as strands of sword chi. Due to inertia, the scattered strands of profound sword chi shot towards the early overgod with the sickle. Caught off guard, the early overgod was turned into a beehive by the strands of sword chi. Every single strand of sword chi pierced his body easily, riddling him with holes in a single moment. Moreover, the power of the laws of the sword lingered in the wounds, constantly destroying his body, causing his wounds to worsen. The overgod grunted and retreated from the battle with his sickle. He was already heavily injured, so he could no longer fight. Jianshan had used up all the power of his soul after shooting out the 2 strands of profound sword chi. His head felt heavy as he experienced waves of dizziness. However, as the medicinal effects of the mind recovery pill took effect, his depleted Yuan spirit power immediately began to replenish rapidly. 7 seconds had passed. Kill. The 4 remaining overgods all went mad. They basically charged towards Jianshan with bloodshot eyes because they saw that most of Fairy Haoyue's body had already fused with the power of laws that protected the divine King Duanmu's remains. Jianshan's body began to recede rapidly. His mind cleared up once again. Even though the power of his soul had been replenished, it was clearly not enough for him to use a 3rd strand of profound sword chi in just a few seconds. Daluo sword. Jianshan called out. He formed a seal with his hand, and the flying snow sword immediately flickered with golden light. A strand of golden sword chi condensed around the flying snow sword. As he swung the sword, the golden sword chi shot out with a swish, colliding with the sword of one of the overgods. The Daluo sword chi dispersed as well, while the early overgod who had received the sword chi came to a halt. He staggered a few steps back uncontrollably. The other 3 overgods had already arrived before Jianshan. One of them used a huge hammer, swinging it towards Jianshan's chest. The other 2 all used swords without any exception. They stabbed out with the laws of fire and the laws of darkness. The sword of fire stabbed towards Jianshan, while the Sword of Darkness stabbed past Jianshan, directly towards Fairy Haoyue behind Jianshan. Jianshan's eyes suddenly narrowed when he saw the sword that stabbed towards Fairy Haoyue. Afterwards, he roared out furiously as his gaze became extremely shocking. At the same time, specks of red light actually appeared in his eyes. This was a sign that he was about to lose his mind. His main mission was to protect Fairy Haoyue for 10 seconds. No matter how great the danger was during that time, he could not dodge, nor could he retreat. He had to face it head-on. The sword had already stabbed towards Fairy Haoyue. Fairy Haoyue was in danger. In that critical moment, Jianshan extended his left hand. Chaotic force coiled around his hand, as well as a layer of silver-white light. He directly used his hand to grab the sword that stabbed towards Fairy Haoyue. At the same time, he placed the flying snow sword before him, blocking the hammer that was hurtling towards his chest. Spurt. The sword with the laws of fire stabbed into Jianshan. It pierced through Jianshan's body. Droplets of immature, chaotic blood dripped from the sharp tip of the sword. Every droplet of blood was quite powerful, enough to directly kill a few weaker receival experts. The hand that Jianshan used to grab Fairy Haoyue's sword was also covered in blood. His flesh had been ripped apart, revealing his white bones. Fortunately, Jianshan managed to grab the sword with the laws of darkness firmly, preventing it from harming Fairy Haoyue. His body stood in front of Fairy Haoyue like a tough shield, blocking all the shock waves. 8 seconds had passed. At this moment, the 3 overgods had already arrived before Jianshan. They were no weaker than Jianshan in the first place, let alone the fact that it was 3 against 1. Jianshan struggled to fend off all of them, and he also had to protect Fairy Haoyue. The red light in Jianshan's eyes became brighter and brighter. The world before Jianshan slowly became blood red. Jianshan also knew that he was about to lose his mind, but there was nothing he could do right now. As he watched Fairy Haoyue emerge with the power of laws successfully, a sliver of determination suddenly appeared in his eyes. He called out, "Explode, flying snow sword." With a deafening boom, the flying snow sword exploded in a dazzling white light. Along with it, the laws of the sword and strands of chaotic force that enveloped the flying snow sword exploded as well. Immediately, a terrifying shock wave of energy with the power of the laws of the sword and chaotic force dispersed into the surroundings. It immediately pushed the 3 early overgods far away. Jianshan pulled out the spear he had obtained from killing the skinny overgod from his space ring. He held the spear with one hand and directly stabbed it deeply into the ground. He used the spear to stabilize himself. The terrifying shockwaves from the explosion of the flying snow sword landed on Jianshan. Due to the support of the spear, Jianshan stood where he was like a mountain. He endured the storm-like shockwaves without taking a single step back. However, he paid a huge price as well. His wounds became even more severe, and he vomited mouthfuls of blood. His face was sheet white. 9 seconds had already passed. The 3 early gods stabilized themselves very soon. Before the ripples of energy could settle down, the 3 of them charged towards Jianshan again while enduring the storm of energy. Jianshan stared at the 3 of them firmly. At this moment, his consciousness had become rather blurry. The world he saw was gradually filled with blood. In the final second, the bloody Jianshan suddenly charged towards the 3 early overgods. He spread his arms and grabbed the swords of the 2 early overgods with his hands. He used the damaged armor to forcefully endure the attack from the hammer. Bang! With a thud, Jianshan was blown far away by the hammer. As he flew back, he constantly vomited blood. He was extremely heavily injured. Quick, kill that soul. The 3 overgods immediately charged towards Fairy Haoyue after sending Jianshan flying. Their gazes were cold. However, it was also at this moment that Fairy Haoyue's illusionary soul completely submerged into the power of laws, vanishing from the 3 overgods' vision. Only a cold, murderous voice rang out. "If you dare to kill the 2 of them, I'll definitely wipe out your entire clan once I recover my strength. Even if I have to flee to the ends of the world, I'll hunt you down. Even the divine king of your divine kingdom won't be able to protect you. The expressions of the three early overgods changed again and again when they heard that. Even the divine king could not protect them. Did the soul possess the strength of the divine king when she was still alive? Or had she surpassed the divine king? On the other side, Shun Jian was covered in blood as well. He collapsed on the ground, heavily injured. Although the two early overgods who fought against him were not injured, they seemed to be in a rather horrible shape. Their clothes had been ripped apart by sword chi. Chapter 1763. The eyes of the two early overgods that Shun Jian had kept busy turned cold. They cursed resentfully, "God damn it. That's because we're two mighty overgods, yet we've been kept busy by a god for so long, allowing the soul to approach Duanmu, divine king's corpse. Just a mere god has actually made us lose our opportunity to obtain Duanmu, divine king's legacy. That's unforgivable." The other overgod in tattered clothes said coldly as well. "He's made us lose our opportunity to obtain Duanmu, divine king's legacy. This god's sins are so great that even if we kill him, we won't be able to make up for it. I want him to suffer a fate worse than death." The faces of the two overgods who had been kept busy by Shun Jian for 10 seconds were sunken. Their eyes were filled with heavy killing intent. They were two mighty early overgods. Whether it be in terms of cultivation or comprehension, they possessed an absolute advantage, yet it took them so much effort to kill a god. Moreover, they were reduced to such horrible shapes. They felt utterly humiliated, so their killing intent towards Shun Jian was extremely intense. As for Fairy Haoyu's threat, they directly ignored it. Although the threat from a frail soul had indeed shocked them, they were not naive enough to believe that Fairy Haoyue would actually possess such strength in the future. At this moment, Jianshen climbed up from the ground as well. He clung onto the final sliver of clarity in his head and arrived before Shun Jian as quickly as he could. He directly lifted up the heavily injured Shun Jian, who could not even stand up. At the same time, he formed a seal with his hands. Linear lightning release. As soon as he completed the seal, Jianshan became enveloped by a bright, white light. He turned into a bolt of lightning and shot towards the entrance with unbelievable speed. In just a single instance, he arrived before the entrance at a speed that completely surpassed that of lightning. He was about to flee. The eyes of the early overgods all narrowed. They stared at Jianshan, who had fled to the entrance in a single instance, in shock. However, without any exception, none of them could do anything about it. With Jianshan's terrifying speed, even they were unable to stop him. What astonishing speed! Even the laws of wind pales in comparison. An overgod exclaimed in surprise. An overgod sighed in amazement. He had never seen someone move so quickly in his life. As a matter of fact, Jianshan and Shun Jian's bodies had even elongated as they flew, as if they had turned into two streaks of light. After Jianshan's laws of the sword reached sword spirit, his speed naturally increased by a lot when he used the linear lightning release. However, at this moment, a burly man suddenly appeared at the entrance. Dejected, his face was filled with regret and regret. Clearly, he had just entered the entrance of the entrance. The burly man was not weak either. To no surprise, he was a mid-overgod. Clearly, he was one of the overgods who had left in pursuit of the golden sword. As soon as the burly man entered the third hut, Jianshan, who had used the linear lightning release to flee, just happened to collide with the burly man. Bang! When the two collided, a muffled sound rang out, and a shockwave visible to the naked eye spread out in all directions. Jianshan was knocked back, and the terrifying speed from the linear lightning release suddenly vanished. He immediately felt like all his bones were about to fall apart from the collision. Excruciating pain filled his entire body, and his organs were shattered. Blood spurted from his mouth in large mouthfuls. Caught off guard, the burly man staggered backwards from Jianshan's collision. He left behind a deep footprint on the ground with each step. In the end, he stumbled and fell on his bottom. His face was flushed, and his organs were in turmoil from Jianshan's collision. "Which bastard hit me?" The burly man leapt to his feet and bellowed out. His face was pale, and he was utterly furious. He had just entered the hut, and before he could even see what was going on, he had been knocked to the ground. Naturally, he was furious. However, he had no idea that his sudden intrusion had cut off Jianxun's hopes of escaping, forcing Jianxun back into a corner. Jianxun, who had collided with the burly man, became even more injured as a result. Afterwards, various over-gods entered the hut as well. They were all rather dejected and filled with great reluctance. These people were all experts who had fought for the flying swords. They had all returned now, and many of them were covered in blood. Their faces were abnormally pale. They were all injured. Jianxun's eyes became gloomy when he saw this. He sighed and sighed. He knew that he was done for this time. As soon as he thought of that, his eyes became completely blood-red. His last sliver of consciousness that he had been holding on to vanished as well. He had completely lost his mind. However, his injuries were just too severe. The moment he lost his mind, his head tilted to the side, and he fainted. To the side, Shun Jian had also fainted. Jianxun had used the linear lightning release to strike the burly man with extremely great speed. The powerful force of impact had also caused his injuries to worsen. If it were not for the fact that the two of them had already become gods, just the force of the collision probably would have been enough to shatter them. They would have been reduced to a pile of mush. The return of the over-gods caused the expressions of Guhun, Binglu, and Fengbuel to change. Without any hesitation, they immediately fled towards the exit. Jianxun had assisted Fairy Hao Yue in passing through the power of laws and approaching the divine King Duanmu's remains. Without a doubt, he had become the public enemy here. The three of them had become his accomplices as well. If they continued to remain here, they would not end up well. Don't let them escape. Stop them. An early overgod called out as soon as the three of them fled. His eyes were filled with intense hatred. Guhun, Binglu, and Fengbuel fled very quickly. They shot towards the exit with lightning speed. Along the way, Guhun and Fengbuel extended their hands towards Jianxun and Shunjian. They wanted to take the two of them with them. However, the two early overgods that Shunjian had been busy with earlier took action. They stopped Fengbuel and Guhun. At the same time, the burly man who had been knocked to the ground by Jianxun looked over coldly. The burly man was a mid-overgod. His gaze immediately made Guhun and Feng Yixiao's hearts skip a beat. They no longer cared about Jianxun and Shun Jian, immediately charging out without any hesitation. The overgods who had fought against Shun Jian and Jianxun before immediately pursued them. At the same time, they called out for the overgods who had returned later to stop Guhun, Fengbuel, and Fengbuel. However, the overgods who had returned later had no idea what had happened. Moreover, the people who had called out were only early overgods. It was impossible for early overgods to persuade them. Naturally, they did not do anything. In the end, the three of them managed to escape successfully. God damn it. Why do we let the three of them go? They're a group. They assisted a soul pass through the power of laws. They've probably obtained what belongs to the Divine King by now. An early overgod who had fought against Shunjian said resentfully, "What did you say?" Someone passed through the powerful power of laws and approached the Divine King Duanmu's remains. The expressions of the overgods who had returned later changed drastically when they heard that. They all cried out as they glared at the person who had spoken. Chapter 1764. Since the soul is with Jianxun, we can't let Jianxun go. A late overgod growled as killing intent surged in his eyes. It was chilling. That's right. We can't let Jianxun go. Jianxun actually stole Duanmu Divine King's belongings with his companions when we were away. We can't let him go so easily. The overgods in the surroundings all spoke with righteous indignation. Every single one of them felt very resentful. Not only did they fail to obtain Duanmu Divine King's flying sword, but even the other belongings of Duanmu Divine King have been taken away as well. How could they accept this? The late overgod of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, Yang Kai, and a few other overgods from the royal capital stood in the crowd as well. However, they said nothing about what had happened to Jianxun. They remained silent. At this moment, a black-robed old man walked out. He stared at Jianxun coldly and said, old man possesses a secret soul-stealing technique. Once the old man extracts Jianshan's soul, everyone can deal with it. With that, he made his way towards Jianshan. The black-robed old man was the ancestor of the Mo family from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He was a mid-over-god. No one stopped the ancestor of the Mo family. Instead, they just watched. Jianshan had taken away their fortune, so they naturally resented him. They were tempted to kill Jianshan as soon as possible. The ancestor of the Mo family arrived before Jianshan and directly extended his hand towards Jianshan. However, when he came in contact with the damaged armor on Jianshan, his eyes narrowed by an undetectable amount. God artifact. This armor is actually a god artifact. The ancestor of the Mo family was greatly shocked as his heart churned. God artifacts were powerful treasures that had surpassed the truth tier. They were extremely precious and rare. Even a supreme divine king like Duanmu did not have the right to possess one. This was because under normal circumstances, only chaotic primes had the right to possess god artifacts. There were extremely few infinite primes who possess god artifacts. In the Saints world, even many peak infinite primes used half-god artifacts or supreme quality truth tier treasures. Every single god artifact was something that infinite primes could only dream of. There were far too many records of god artifacts in the Saints world. Although the ancestor of the Mo family had never seen a god artifact before, he possessed a lot of information regarding god artifacts with his strength as a mid-over-god. As a result, he immediately recognized it when he came in contact with it. However, the ancestor of the Mo family did not show anything on his face. He studied the damaged armor like normal and said indifferently, "I never thought that Jianshan would actually be wearing an 8th grade truth tier armor. It's just a pity that it's too damaged. However, the materials used to make it are quite valuable." As he said that, the ancestor of the Mo family took off the damaged armor from Jianshan steadily and stowed it away in his space ring with great composure. However, he was nowhere near as calm as he seemed on the surface. Instead, he became extremely excited. However, he hit it well. Although the god artifact was damaged, it was still a god artifact after all. Its remaining value was nothing to primordial realm experts, but it was a supreme treasure to any overgod. I'm rich. I never thought I'd actually find a god artifact. It's a god artifact, a god artifact. The ancestor of the Mo family was overjoyed, but he did not dare to show it at all. He extended his hand like nothing had happened, and as his hand formed seals, he began to use a secret technique to extract Jianshan's soul. Ha ha ha! I've already set my sights on Jianshan. None of you are allowed to harm him, or I won't go easy on you. At this moment, a voice rang out from behind everyone. A handsome young man in white robes who seemed to be in his 20s entered as well. The young man smiled frivolously as he held a fan. He walked past all the overgods leisurely, directly making his way towards Jianshan. Behind this young man, with a folding fan, there was a tall and sturdy man following closely behind him like a loyal guard. The appearance of the young man caused the expressions of all the overgods present to change slightly. They had seen the young man and the burly man from afar when they were trying to break through the entrance to the divine King Duanmu's dwelling. They knew that the young man possessed quite the background, and he probably came from a powerful clan or organization. As a result, they ignored the young man's rude actions outside. The ancestor of the Mo family paused as well. He turned his head and looked at the young man. His face sank slightly as well. "No, Jianshan has taken away what originally belonged to us. You're dreaming if you want us to hand him over. It's impossible unless Jianshan makes the companion of the soul hand over everything." A late overgod stood forward and said firmly. Even though the young man possessed some background, this matter was related to their interests. It was even related to their breakthrough to the Divine King. As a result, even though they feared the young man's background slightly, they still objected. Moreover, there were several dozen overgods gathered here right now. They represented several divine kingdoms in the surroundings. All of them wanted the fortune left behind by the divine King Duanmu, so they naturally stood on the same side as the young man. Haha, That's not up to you to decide. I'm going to take away Jianshun right now. If there are any seniors who are unconvinced, you definitely have to stand out and stop me." The young man chuckled as he fanned his fan. The young man waved his fan and chuckled. He was insufferably arrogant, not taking these master gods seriously at all. He directly arrived before Jianshun and glanced at the unconscious Shunjian. Afterwards, he took out a spatial treasure in the shape of a divine hall and stowed Shunjian away. Afterwards, he picked up Jianshun with his arms and swaggered towards the exit. He completely ignored the murderous gazes of the surrounding overgods. "Stop. If you don't let go of Jianshun, don't even think about leaving today," the late overgod blocked the young man and said with a sunken face. "That's right. If you don't hand over Jianshun, don't even think about leaving today." Hand over Jianshun. Several other overgods stood forward after the late overgod. They blocked the young man's path as well. Their gazes were cold as cold light flickered in their eyes. "How dare you?" At this moment, the burly man behind the young man bellowed out. He directly waved his hand at the overgods in front of him. Immediately, a terrifying gust of wind whistled out, directly sweeping towards the overgods. Although the gust of wind did not give off any pressure, the overgods were unable to resist at all when it swept towards them. They were blown far away like leaves. Chapter 1765. The overgods were unable to resist at all before the gust of wind. Even though there were late overgods among them, they were still as insignificant as ants before the gust of wind. No matter how they struggled, no matter how hard they tried to resist, it was all to no avail. In the end, the overgods directly fell out of the space from the gust of wind, vanishing from everyone's sight. Immediately, the surroundings fell silent. The other overgods all widened their eyes as they stared at the burly man behind the young man in shock. Their hearts churned. Even the ancestor of the MO family who had taken away Jianshun's damaged armor was stunned. His face was filled with shock and fear. He secretly rejoiced that he did not stand up to stop the young man with a folding fan. With just a wave of his hand, several overgods had been sent away without being able to put up any resistance at all. There were even late overgods among them. It was just too terrifying. The Divine King. He's definitely the Divine King. Only before the Divine King will late overgods be so powerless. With just a wave of his hand, he was able to render several Lord Gods defenseless. I'm afraid that even the person ranked first on the 3,000 Lord Gods ladder wouldn't be able to do such a thing. A Divine King. This is definitely a Divine King. Heavens, there's actually a Divine King protecting him all the way. Just how terrifying is the power behind this young man with a fan? Everyone's gazes towards the young man with a folding fan, and the brawny man had undergone an earth-shattering change. Previously, they were only a little afraid of the young man with a folding fan, but now they were afraid of the young man with a folding fan, an unprecedented fear. The young man did not stop. He directly made his way out with the heavily injured Jianshun. He did not show any surprise at how Uncle Qin had rendered several overgods helpless with just a wave of his hand. It was as if this was how it should be. "I'm going to be leaving. Seniors, if you still want Jianshun, you have to hurry up," Jianshun said with a smile on his face. The young man had a frivolous smile on his face. His gaze slowly swept across the faces of the crowd as he spoke with a mischievous smile. None of the surrounding overgods dared to make sound. Instead, as the young man advanced, they quickly made way for him. They did not dare to stop him at all. They didn't even dare to show any dissatisfaction on their faces for fear of offending the young man with the folding fan. The young man easily left with Jianshun. Even though the overgods felt reluctant, there was nothing they could do. The soul still hasn't come out yet. Let's keep watch here. Once the soul comes out, we'll kill her immediately. She won't be able to take anything away. An early overgod suddenly said after the young man left. When they heard that, the eyes of the surrounding overgods lit up. They all stood guard and attacked the power of law at the same time, increasing the depletion of the power of law. However, not everyone stayed behind. A few of the heavily injured overgods knew that they would not be able to obtain anything even if they stayed behind, so they just left. The ancestor of the Mo family did not stay behind either. He left the divine king's dwelling. He had already obtained a damaged god artifact, which was a great harvest, so he was satisfied. He did not want to suffer in the upcoming battle. At this moment, Fairy Haoyue's illusionary soul hovered above the divine king's remains in the region, protected by the power of laws. Slivers of power actually radiated from the incomplete golden core in the divine king's head, forming streams that constantly flowed towards Fairy Haoyue's soul. As a result, Fairy Haoyue's soul recovered at an extremely terrifying rate. Moreover, some of the divine king's power from when he was alive was still stored in his remains. It had not dispersed with the passage of time, so Fairy Haoyue absorbed the power madly. A space ring hovered in the air. It was the space ring on the divine king's finger. At this moment, cube-sized divine crystals hovered out from the space ring. The surging energy within the divine crystals turned into streams that were all absorbed by Fairy Haoyue. The divine crystals were pure, without any impurities. They had all reached the level of supreme grade, even more precious than high-grade divine crystals. Fairy Haoyue was using the items left behind by the divine king to recover her strength and body. After who knew how long, Jianshun gradually regained consciousness. When he opened his eyes, he saw a deep blue sky and white clouds. You've actually woken up so quickly. I thought you'd be unconscious for a day or two. I never thought you'd wake up in just 6 hours. A surprised voice rang out from beside Jianshun while he was still in a daze. It rang out clearly in Jianshun's ears. Jianshun looked over and discovered a white-robed young man who seemed to be in his 20s sitting nearby with his legs crossed. He had a frivolous smile on his face as he stared at Jianshun in great interest. A burly man with his back towards Jianshun sat near the young man. He sat on the ground with his legs crossed. Jianshun quickly looked around and discovered that he was in a mountain range. Fierce winds blew around him, causing his hair to dance wildly. Where is this place? And who are you? Jianshun asked. At the same time, he moved his body. He wanted to stand up, but he immediately felt intense pain all over his body, causing him a frown. He was very heavily injured, and he had yet to recover from his wounds. Just moving slightly would affect his wounds. The young man pondered. He looked around and said with uncertainty, this seems to be the divine kingdom of 9 stars. I don't remember it very clearly. As for who I am, with that, the young man suddenly smiled resplendently. He slowly stood up and arrived before Jianshun while waving his fan. He sat down beside Jianshun and smiled. I'm your savior. If I hadn't saved you, you would have been Sai. I don't even know who that person is. It's just that an over-god from the divine kingdom of Qingyang, called the Mo family, or something extracted your soul to nourish your body. That would have been a fate worse than death. Thank you for saving me. I, Jianshun, will remember your kindness, the young man said to the young man. However, he firmly committed the Mo family of the divine kingdom of Qingyang to memory. They wanted to extract his soul and make him suffer a fate worse than death. If that really happened, how could he just let it go? My name isn't Sir. Jianshun, listen up. My name is Tong Tian. Tong as in Tong Tian, Tian as in Tong Tian. What do you think? Isn't my name very domineering? The young man puffed out his chest and said complacently. His voice was filled with pride. It is indeed very domineering. Thank you for your assistance, young Master Tong Tian, said Jianshun. From their short conversation, he could already tell that Tong Tian was probably a disciple of a large clan. He possessed a sense of pride and arrogance that originated from his very bones, but he was not a bad person. Tong Tian chuckled aloud. Jianshun, your wounds are extremely severe. You probably won't be able to recover in a short amount of time. I feel like I've known you for a long time, so I'll help you out. With that, a black pill silently appeared in Tong Tian's hand. He glanced at Xinzheng, who sat nearby, with his back towards them in a rather guilty manner before feeding the pill to Jianshun very quickly. Xinzheng's face twitched unnaturally as he sat there with his eyes closed. He turned around and stared at Tong Tian. He said with a darkened face, Young master, Why did you steal Elder Gu's 9 refined, life-returning pill? Chapter 1766. Although Qin Zheng had his back towards them and was resting with his eyes closed, just what level of cultivation did he possess? Even with his eyes closed, Tong Tian's actions could not be hidden from him. Tong Tian was surprised and became even more guilty. However, he remained composed on the surface. He fanned himself with his fan and said, "Uncle Qin, you've misunderstood me. It's not like Elder Gu is the only one who can refine 9 refined life-giving pills. Who knows how many pill masters can refine 9 refined, life-giving pills in the entire Saints world? How can I not obtain a few 9 refined, life-giving pills with my identity? Moreover, it's not like you don't know just how powerful the formations in Elder Gu's pill room are. How am I supposed to get in with my strength?" Qin Zheng shook his head helplessly when he heard Tong Tian's serious explanation. Although Tong Tian's words made sense, Qin Zheng knew that the young master before him had probably used some unknown method to sneak into Elder Gu's pill room and steal quite a few pills. Jinshin's expression became rather strange when he heard the conversation between Tong Tian and Qin Zheng. He had already realized that Tong Tian had probably stolen the pill from the clan. However, at this moment, Jinshin's face changed slightly. In the next moment, a gentle, white light radiated from his body, completely enveloping him in a single instance. He seemed to have become a huge cocoon as a heavy medicinal fragrance wafted out. Just a single kiss was enough to make people feel extremely comfortable. There was an incomparably comfortable feeling. It was as if the remaining impurities in his body had been cleansed by this medicinal fragrance. Jinshin's wounds actually healed at an unbelievable rate under the white light. It was so fast that even Jinshin's face changed. He was greatly shocked. In just a few seconds, the white light around Jinshin receded, revealing Jinshin. However, his complexion had already returned to normal, and his wounds had completely healed. What a powerful pill. It's countless times more powerful than any healing pill I've ever seen. Jinshin could not help but sigh in amazement. He understood just how severe his wounds were. Even with his radiant saint force and chaotic body, he would need at least a day to recover. This speed was already heaven-defying enough. However, the 9 refined, life-giving pill had actually healed Jinshin in just a few seconds. In the past, Jinshin rarely ingested healing pills when he was injured because the effects of healing pills were basically negligible. They were nowhere near as effective as the chaotic body. But now, the healing power of the 9 refined life revival pill was more than 100 times stronger than his chaotic force. Tong Tian said rather proudly when he heard Jinshin's praise, "Of course. Why don't you take a look at what kind of pill this is? It's a 9 refined, life-giving pill. In order to obtain them, I've spent a tremendous amount of effort. But even with that being the case, I've only managed to obtain 3. If it weren't for the fact that I found you to be an old friend at first sight, I wouldn't have been willing to take them out." Jinshin stood up and thanked Tong Tian again. Then he said, "Young Master Tong Tian, a friend of mine is still in the divine King Duanmu's dwelling. She could be in danger at any time, so I must return immediately. Please forgive me for my lack of manners." "Jinshin, there are several dozen overgods in the dwelling. Are you sure you can save your friend from them?" Tong Tian said steadily. Jinshin became rather stern. He said, "If I have enough time, I do have some confidence." Jinshin thought of the small high-grade divine crystal mine in the Dong and province. With his current strength, he could fend off all the powerful clans in the Dong and province, so it would naturally be extremely easy for him to take over the mine. As long as he could reach the 10th layer of the chaotic body through the mine, his battle prowess would definitely increase drastically. With the strength of the chaotic body, he was confident that he could deal with mid-overgods. Even if he could not defeat late-overgods, he could still hold them off. Taizheng walked over and looked at Jinshin in admiration. He said, "You should be talking about the soul. You don't have to worry about that. Your friend is not simple at all. He should be an infinite prime when he was alive, and he's currently using Duanmu's items to recover his strength. Those overgods won't be able to threaten him." Jianchen was finally relieved when he heard that. However, he was surprised by Hao Yue's strength as well. It was actually possible for him to be an infinite prime. However, Jianchen seemed to realize something soon afterwards. He stared at Tai Zheng in shock. Tai Zheng could actually tell Fairy Hao Yue's strength when she was alive. Moreover, he knew that Fairy Hao Yue was using the items left behind by the Divine King to recover. Could Tai Zheng see through the power of laws that protected the Divine King's remains? Jianchen, since your friend isn't in any danger, there's no need for you to leave in a hurry. Come, have a drink with me, Tong Tian laughed. With a wave of his hand, he filled the table with delicacies again. He said rather proudly, I have a large amount of delicacies on me. It's enough for us to eat for several hundred years. Many of them are treasures of the world. Jianchen, sit. Let's chat as we eat. Jianchen hesitated for a while when he saw the table of delicacies. He could not turn them down, so he just sat down and began to chat with Tong Tian. Brother Jianchen, the armor you're wearing seems to have been taken away by that overgod from the Mo family. Don't you plan on getting it back? Tong Tian asked as he crossed his legs. He seemed like a sloppy person. A cold light flashed through Jianchen's eyes, and he said, My armor can't be taken away so easily. Before long, I'll personally pay a visit to the Mo family in the Divine Kingdom of Qingyang. The Mo family of the Divine Kingdom of Qingyang isn't anything good. I don't like them either. Brother Jianchen, when you visit the Mo family, you have to call me. I'll protect you, Tong Tian said confidently. Tong Tian said rather confidently. Even though he was only a mid-god, he did not take the Mo family seriously at all. Thank you for your kind intentions, Brother Tong Tian. However, I should be enough to deal with the Mo family. Jianchen clasped his fist. Afterwards, he seemed to think of something and asked, Brother Tong Tian, may I ask who obtained the Divine King's flying sword in the end? Jianchen stared at Tong Tian with brimming interest. Now that he no longer had the flying snow sword, he just happened to need a higher quality flying sword. The golden flying sword seems to have been taken away by an old man who also comprehended the way of the sword. But I have to say the old man really is bold, actually daring enough to go against the heavenly demon religion. That's the heavenly demon religion we're talking about. Across the entire cloud plane, there aren't many organizations that dare to provoke them for no reason. That old man really is fearless. He has no idea how powerful the heavenly demon religion is. Tong Tian became serious when he mentioned the heavenly demon religion. The heavenly demon religion? Jianchen was slightly surprised. This was the second time he had heard about the heavenly demon religion. He could not help but become even more curious. Brother Tong Tian, may I ask if you can tell me about the heavenly demon religion? Chapter 1767. He growled, I don't know a lot about the heavenly demon religion. All I know is that the heavenly demon religion was only established in the past 1,000,000 years. When the heavenly demon religion was first established, it was extremely weak, but it developed at an extremely shocking rate. In just 1,000,000 years, it became a renowned organization, even with the entire cloud plane in perspective. Very few people are bold enough to provoke them. Even our clan fears the heavenly demon religion slightly. If there isn't too great of conflict of interest, we won't be willing to provoke them. The heavenly demon religion is actually so powerful. Doesn't that mean Ling Hogong, who obtained the Divine King's flying sword, is in deep trouble? Jianchen frowned as he secretly worried for Ling Hogong. All right, Brother Tong Tian, may I ask what the strength of the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan, and how powerful is the leader of the heavenly demon religion? Jianchen followed up with another question. I only know that the vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion all possess strength at the primordial realm. I don't know the specifics, but Uncle Qin knows more than me. Tong Tian looked at Qin Zheng. Qin Zheng did not turn down Jianchen's question. After a moment of thought, he said, the heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane is only a branch. There are branches of the heavenly demon religion on other planes and even some great planets. It must be said that the person who founded the heavenly demon religion is truly impressive. His abilities are so great that in just 1,000,000 years, he managed to develop the heavenly demon religion to its current scale while enduring the pressure and threats from all directions. Qin Zheng paused when he reached there, and Jianshun listened with all his attention. He said nothing, as this was a great opportunity for him to understand the heavenly demon religion. It was even possible that the information he heard from Qin Zheng was very difficult to purchase outside, as it required a certain level of strength before he could come into contact with it. Qin Zheng continued, "On the cloud plane, there are a total of 3 vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, and they're all infinite primes. As for Huayan, he's at early infinite primes, so he's on par with the other 2 vice leaders. As for the leader, no one has ever heard of the existence of a leader of the heavenly demon religion ever since the heavenly demon religion was founded. It's as if there's no leader in the heavenly demon religion." "What? There's no leader of the heavenly demon religion? Only vice leaders?" Jianxin was stunned. He was extremely surprised. "We don't know if there's a leader of the heavenly demon religion or not. In short, no one has ever heard of a leader of the heavenly demon religion in all these years. There's only a great elder, and this great elder is the actual controller of the heavenly demon religion." Qin Zheng's voice was rather heavy. As soon as he mentioned the great elder of the heavenly demon religion, he became extremely stern and filled with deep fear. "Great elder?" Jianxin murmured. Without even thinking, he knew that the great elder was a supreme expert. Although the heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane has 3 infinite primes and is not weak, they're not taken seriously by some of the peak organizations on the cloud plane. What they truly fear is the mysterious great elder of the heavenly demon religion. It's exactly because of the great elder's existence that the peak organizations on the cloud plane fear the heavenly demon religion slightly, unwilling to provoke them so easily. "Uncle Qin, is the great elder of the heavenly demon religion really that powerful? He's actually able to support an organization all by himself? He's able to make so many peak organizations fear him." This time, even Tong Tian was shocked. Clearly, he did not know about this either. Qin Zheng nodded. "The great elder is indeed extremely powerful. The reason why the heavenly demon religion can become one of the peak organizations on the cloud plane is completely because of the great elder. However, the great elder of the heavenly demon religion is extremely mysterious. Very few people have seen him personally. It's said that the great elder has only taken action 3 times since the founding of the heavenly demon religion. The first time was on the delight plane. At that time, the heavenly demon religion offended a large organization on the delight plane. The organization launched a devastating attack on the heavenly demon religion, which led to the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion directly slaughtered his way into the organization's sect. In the end, neither of the 2 chaotic primes managed to escape. They were killed off. From then on, the organization vanished from the delight plane. The second time was on planet Tianming, one of the 81 great planets. The master of the planet destroyed the branch of the heavenly demon religion on the planet. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion and the master of the planet engaged in a great battle in outer space. In the end, the master of the planet was slain by the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. When he reached there, even Qin Zheng struggled to remain composed. His expression changed, and he sighed gently. The master of the planet was a grand prime, yet he actually died at the hands of the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. Jianxin and Tong Tian's expressions changed when they heard that. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion was just too terrifying. Even a Grand Prime had died at his hands. After all, Grand Prime stood at the apex of the Saints' world. They were at the end of the path of cultivation. They were equivalent to immortal exalts in the immortals' world. Jianxin had heard about the Anata Grand Prime, the Nirvanic immortal exalt, and the old clansmen of the Azulite twin swords. Then what about the third time the great elder of the heavenly demon religion took action? Tong Tian asked impatiently. Qin Jing's expression became mixed. He said, "The third time was 100,000 years ago. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion fought against a hall elder of the god clan on the god Nigma plane. The hall elder was also a grand prime. Although he was an early grand prime, he comprehended the laws of destruction. He was so powerful that the master of planet Tianming could not compare to him. Qin Zheng did not continue when he reached there. Then what was the result? Did the hall elder of the god clan win? Or did the great elder of the heavenly demon religion win? Jinshin asked. He cared about this very much. Wasn't the god clan on the god Nigma plane Taita's clan? There was no victory or defeat in that battle. It seemed to have ended without a conclusion, answered Qin Zheng. Jinshin and Tong Tian looked at each other. Ended without a conclusion? Didn't that mean that the hall elder of the god clan was unable to do anything to the great elder of the heavenly demon religion? It was also because the great elder of the heavenly demon religion had taken action 3 times that the heavenly demon religion's status in the saints' world was established. As a result, the peak organizations on the cloud plane were unwilling to provoke the heavenly demon religion so easily. Even if the heavenly demon religion went overboard on the cloud plane, they would turn a blind eye to it as long as it didn't affect the interests of the peak organizations. Chapter 1768. Jianshan sank into his thoughts. When he first saw the heavenly demon religion in the divine King Duanmu's dwelling, he had realized that it was an extremely powerful organization, but he had never thought that the heavenly demon religion would be so powerful. In particular, the mysterious great elder who had founded the heavenly demon religion was so powerful that even Jianshan felt extremely shocked. Even a grand prime of the saints' world had died to his hands. Such a powerful existence was something that the current Jianshan could only look up to. Jianshan became even more worried for Ling Hogong. In order to obtain the divine King Duanmu's flying sword, Ling Hogong had actually offended such a great organization. With the power of the heavenly demon religion, even if Ling Hogong had reached the same level as the divine King Duanmu, when he was still alive, he would not be able to fend them off. Although Jianshan was nowhere close to Ling Hogong's obsession with the way of the sword and his straightforwardness had won Jianshan's admiration. He naturally did not wish for Ling Hogong to be harmed by the heavenly demon religion like this. Uncle Qin stared at Jianshan as if he could see through Jianshan's worries with a single glance. He said, "You don't need to worry too much. Duanmu should have offended one of the 3 vice leaders, Huayan. However, the branch of the heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane has 3 vice leaders. Huayan alone doesn't represent the entire heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane. As for the mysterious great elder of the heavenly demon religion, you don't need to worry about him at all. Unless the entire heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane is destroyed, only then will the mysterious great elder of the heavenly demon religion be forced out. As for the personal grievances of the vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, the great elder will naturally not interfere with them with his status. Even without the terrifyingly powerful great elder, just the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan, is still an undefeatable enemy to Ling Hogong." Jianshan sighed gently. He could only pray for Ling Hogong now. There was nothing he could do to help. Tong Tian's eyes swiveled when he heard Jianshan's words. He said to Jianshan, "Jianshan, if you want to protect that old man who obtained Duanmu's divine king's flying sword, I have an idea." What idea? Even though Jianshan knew that Tong Tian's idea was probably nothing good, he could not help but ask when he saw Tong Tian's mischievous smile. Tong Tian chuckled. "It's very simple. Jianshan, join our Tong family. With your talent, you'll definitely receive the full support of the clan once you join us. You'll also possess an extremely great status in the clan. As long as you become a member of our Tong family, protecting your friend will be a piece of cake." Qin Zheng also looked at Jianshan, waiting for Jianshan's reply. There was a sliver of anticipation in his calm eyes. Even he was extremely shocked by Jianshan's talent. He had clearly observed Jianshan's character in the divine king's dwelling, so he was extremely satisfied. As a result, he obviously hoped that Jianshan could join the Tong family very much. A gleam of light flashed through Jianshan's eyes. He did not answer Tong Tian. Instead, he asked, "Is your Tong family not afraid of the heavenly demon religion?" Our Tong family naturally fears the heavenly demon religion a little, but we don't fear the vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion. Instead, we fear the great elder behind the heavenly demon religion. This time, it was not Tong Tian who spoke. Instead, it was Qin Zheng who stood to one side. Qin Zheng stared at Jianshun with shining eyes and promised seriously, "Jianshun, if you agree to join our Tong family, not only will our Tong family nurture you with everything we have, but will also provide you with various precious pills, cultivation methods, battle skills, and rare heavenly resources to assist you in maturing. At the same time, our Tong family can protect your friend who has offended the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion." Huan Jianxin fell silent. Without a doubt, Tong Tian's Tong family was one of the peak organizations on the Cloud Plane. They did not even take the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, who was an infinite prime, seriously. If he really did receive the full nurturing of such a powerful clan, breaking through with the chaotic body would obviously be extremely easy. This was because even in the Immortals world, those who had reached major achievement in the chaotic body would be nurtured by large sects and clans without any exception. If they did not have the full support of a large organization, very few people would be able to cultivate the chaotic body to a high level through their own efforts. However, if he joined the Tong family, it would be unavoidable for him to come across primordial realm experts. If he exposed the secret of the twin swords before these experts, it would be a disaster for him. No one would be able to protect him. After a short moment of silence, Jianshun made up his mind very quickly. He said to Qin Zheng and Tong Tian apologetically, "Thank you for your good intentions, Brother Tong Tian and Senior. However, I'm used to being free, so I can't stand being restrained. As a result, I don't want to join any organization for now. Moreover, the Saints' world is so large. I still want to see the world, so I won't be staying on the Cloud Plane for too long." Jinshin's rejection disappointed Qin Zheng and Tong Tian, but they recovered very soon. Tong Tian chuckled aloud and said without minding it at all, it's fine. Since Brother Jinshin doesn't like being restrained, I obviously won't make things difficult for you. Come, Brother Jinshin, let's drink, whether you join our Tong family or not. I've made a friend of you." Tong Tian raised his cup and said generously. Jinshin raised his cup as well and said, "If I succeed in cultivation in the future, if Brother Tong Tian needs my help, I will definitely do my best to repay you for saving me today." With that, Jinshin clinked his cup with Tong Tian's and drank all the wine in the cup. Tong Tian also tossed a medallion to Jinshin and said, "This is my keepsake. If Brother Jinshin comes across any problems you can't handle in the future, you can use this to find me in the Tong family. As long as you don't provoke a primordial realm expert, I'll help you deal with any problems." At the same time, Tong Tian let out Shun Jian. Shun Jian was still unconscious right now. He was very heavily injured. Jianshin immediately placed Shun Jian in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. At the same time, he shoved a few healing pills into Shun Jian's mouth. "Tong Tian, let's see where you run off to. You won't be able to escape. Even if you escape from the Cloud Plane, I can still find you." At this moment, a furious bellow rang out from afar. A red streak of light shot over with lightning speed. From afar, it seemed like a meteor. Tong Tian's hand immediately trembled when he heard the voice, and some of the wine in his cup spilled out. As if he had seen something extremely terrifying, he became flustered. He said, Why has she chased me all the way here? Didn't I just annul the engagement? Is there a need for her to hate me so much? She's actually chasing after me without letting me go. Let's go. Uncle Qin, let's go. Let's go. We can't let her catch up. I can't beat her right now." At that moment, Tong Tian no longer had the usual pride and confidence on his face. A sliver of fear appeared in his eyes as he looked at the red figure hurrying over. A strange expression was revealed on Qin Zheng's face when he saw Tong Tian's terrified manner. He helplessly shook his head. His eyes focused on the red figure that was swiftly approaching. With a wave of his sleeve, he brought Tong Tian and disappeared without a trace. It was as though he had teleported. Brother Jianshun, I'll be leaving first. Let's meet again another day. Tong Tian's voice rang out in Jianshun's ears as he left. He left in an extremely great hurry, not even bothering to take the delicacies on the table. Tong Tian, you bastard, come out. You can't escape from me. No matter where you run, I'll catch you. I'll skin you alive and pull out your tendons. The woman's furious roar rang out from behind. It was extremely fiery. Chapter 1769. Jianshun could not help but shake his head as he watched Tong Tian basically flee in a hurry. He bitterly smiled. Tong Tian gave him the feeling that he was fearless, but it seemed like he had a counter as well. The woman behind him had caught up. He had actually been so frightened that he did not even have the time to put away the table full of delicacies. Tong Tian had even tossed aside the expensive table and chairs that were clearly made from precious materials. Jianshun could not help but look at the woman who shot over with lightning speed. He was rather curious about the woman. Just what kind of person could frighten Tong Tian to such an extent? Under Jianshun's gaze, the woman was engulfed in flames. She gave off a terrifyingly high temperature as she flew to the mountain where Jianshun was. She did not land, instead hovering in the air as she coldly stared down. She was a woman who seemed to be in her 20s. She possessed a pair of almond-shaped eyes that shone with an icy cold light. Her oval face seemed to have been carefully sculpted, possessing a natural beauty that was impossible to find fault with. Her cherry-like lips were red and alluring, making people want to get close to her. Without a doubt, she was an alluring woman. She hovered in the air as her fiery red hair fluttered in the wind. She wore a set of red robes that perfectly outlined her demonic figure. Coupled with her red boots and the roaring flames on her, she seemed like a fire fairy. Who are you? The woman did not chase after Tong Tian. She hovered in the air and asked Jianshun coldly. Her beautiful face was currently filled with gloominess. Jianshun stood on the ground. He did not care about the woman's tone at all. He smiled indifferently and said, I am Jianshun, a nobody. May I ask for your name, young miss? The woman's expression did not change at all. She stared at Jianshun coldly and said, You have no right to know who I am. I saw you with that bastard Tong Tian earlier. Tell me the truth. What is your relationship with Tong Tian? If you hide anything, I will never forgive you. Jianshun's expression did not change. He had already understood that the woman was probably engaged to Tong Tian through what Tong Tian had said earlier. However, Tong Tian had taken the initiative to break off the engagement, which was why the woman had chased after him all over the world. Young Master Tong Tian saved my life before. He's a good friend of mine, replied Jianshun. However, the woman's eyes turned cold when she heard that Jianshun was good friends with Tong Tian. She called out angrily, He can't be a good person to be friends with that bastard. With that, the woman directly sent a palm strike towards Jianshun. With that, the flames around her immediately surged, condensing into a huge hand of flames before her in a single instance. She directly crushed down on Jianshun. Jianshun frowned. The woman was unreasonable. She was rude and unreasonable. With a thought from Jianshun, the power of the laws of the sword in the surroundings immediately gathered. It condensed into a huge strand of sword chi before shooting towards the huge hand of flames. With a boom, the woman's hand of flames immediately shattered. However, the sword chi condensed from Jianshun's power of the laws of the sword did not disperse. It shone with dazzling white light and surged into the sky. Over God, the woman frowned as she stared at the strand of sword chi above Jianshun's head. Miss, aren't you going a little too far? Jianshun said calmly. The woman was a late god, so she was much more powerful than Tong Tian. It would have been better if Jianshun had not said anything. Now that he had, the woman's temper immediately flared up again. She called out, So what if I'm going too far? Don't think that I'm afraid of you, just because you're an over-god. As soon as she finished speaking, the flames around the woman in red suddenly disappeared. However, in the next moment, a strong electric light surrounded her body. A long sword with flashing blue electric arcs also appeared in her hand. The laws of lightning. Jianshun was surprised. The The laws of lightning were also known as one of the laws with the greatest offensive power among the 3,000 laws. They were on par with the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction. Apart from comprehending the laws of fire, the woman had actually comprehended the laws of lightning as well. At this moment, the woman had already charged towards Jianshun with her sword. Apart from using the laws of lightning, she was clearly even faster. Her sword flickered with blue arcs of lightning, sending bolts of lightning towards Jianshun from time to time. Jianshun condensed sword chi with his fingers as he fought against the woman with sword chi. He moved extremely leisurely, but he became even more surprised inside. This was because he discovered that even though the woman was only a late god, her battle prowess was extremely great. Even among late gods, she was probably unmatched. If it were not for the fact that his laws of the sword had already broken through to sword spirit and reached the level of overgods, he probably would not have been the woman's opponent. Lei Ming. At this moment, the woman called out. She pointed her sword at the sky as a strange presence radiated from her. It fused with the laws of the world. In the next moment, a bolt of lightning appeared out of nowhere. With a deafening rumble of thunder, the bolt of lightning struck the woman's sword with great precision. Immediately, the sword shone with dazzling light. Afterwards, as the woman pointed her sword at Jianshun, the lightning condensed on the sword immediately shot towards Jianshun. Jianshun's eyes narrowed. He extended a finger calmly and sent out a powerful strand of sword chi that collided with the bolt of lightning. It immediately erupted with resplendent sparks. The sword chi and the bolt of lightning actually collapsed at the same time. Neither of them gained the upper hand. The mountain Jianshun stood on had already collapsed silently. What strength! Jianshun could not help but sigh in admiration. The woman was just too powerful. She was clearly only a late god, but her battle prowess had vaguely surpassed the limits of late gods. Thunder fire strikes the sky, the woman called out. This time, the laws of lightning and the laws of fire revolved around her at the same time. The power of the two laws turned into two chains that shot towards Jianshun. Jianshun became rather stern. He felt like he was facing an overgod when he faced the woman's attack. The woman's thunder fire strikes the sky vaguely possessed the might of an early overgod. Jianshun formed a seal with his hand, and a golden strand of sword chi condensed. It shot out as a golden streak of light, colliding with the chains condensed from the laws of fire and the laws of lightning. Boom! With a rumble, the woman's laws of lightning and the laws of fire collapsed at the same time. However, Jianshun's golden sword chi did not weaken at all. It continued towards the woman, but it had dimmed slightly. The golden sword chi was just too fast. It destroyed the two divine chains of laws of the woman in red and arrived before her almost instantly. The woman's face did not change. Suddenly, a set of fiery red armor appeared, enveloping her. Chapter 1770. Nice armor. Jianshun could not help but praise as he stared at the woman's armor. He could tell with a single glance that the armor was a defensive treasure of very high quality. Even the overgods who had entered the divine king's dwelling did not possess such a treasure. The woman in red was skilled in two laws and possessed such great battle prowess, so she was definitely a prodigy. Coupled with the fact that she was bold enough to chase after Tong Tian in broad daylight, all of this indicated that the woman in red had quite the background. Jianshun had already learned that large sects and clans would have prodigies, whether it was in the saints' world or the immortals' world. Those who could become heaven's chosen were all people with heaven-defying aptitudes. In addition, the large sects and clans spared no effort in grooming these heaven's chosen. In the end, almost every one of these heaven's chosen had extremely strong combat strength. Very few people in the same realm were their opponents. They had the title of invincible in the same realm. As a matter of fact, many prodigies even possessed the ability to challenge those at a higher level of cultivation. Killing regular experts at a higher level of cultivation was nothing difficult for them. To no surprise, the woman in red was one of the prodigies. She was clearly only a late god, but but she vaguely possessed the battle prowess of an early overgod. Even though she had barely reached that level, it was still impressive enough. Flames of fury burned in the woman's eyes. She became even more furious when she heard Jian-Chun praise her armor. She was completely enraged. This was because, in her opinion, Jian-Chun was blatantly humiliating her. He was telling her that she would have been heavily injured if it were not for the armor. "I'll remember you. Let's wait and see. Next time, no one will be able to save you," the woman in red said coldly. She knew that she was not Jian-Chun's opponent. Flames surrounded her as she fled without even looking back. She gritted her teeth and sighed. "Tong Tian, you bastard. Do you think you can escape from me just because you've been taken away? Humph. Let alone the fact that you're still on the cloud plane. Even if you've left the cloud plane, I'll still be able to find you. I swear that once I catch you, I'll skin you alive and pull out your tendons." Jian-Chun watched the woman in red leave as he secretly shook his head. No wonder Tong Tian wanted to break off the engagement. Although the woman in red possessed alluring beauty, she had such a fiery temper, and she just happened to be so powerful. Anyone who got together with her would be doomed. Afterwards, Jian-Chun rose into the air and left. After flying for a while, he found a city. He spent some divine crystals to purchase a map, and when he found his location, he found the city he was in. He immediately frowned. He had already arrived at the border of the divine kingdom of 9 stars. He was close to the border of the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. The divine kingdom of Pingtian was directly connected to the divine kingdom of 9 stars and 3 cauldrons. If he wanted to return to the divine kingdom of Pingtian right now, he would basically have to cross through the entire territory of the divine kingdom of 9 stars. The divine kingdom of 9 stars was extremely vast. Even its diameter was several billion kilometers. Looks like it'll take almost a month to return to the Dong and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Tong Tian's Uncle Qin is just too terrifying. I've only been unconscious for 4 hours, yet they've brought me here from the divine King Duanmu's dwelling. Jian-Chun smiled bitterly. He felt very helpless. It would take him almost a month to return from a journey that would take him less than 4 hours. In the territory of the divine kingdom of 9 stars, there was a sudden flash of white light several tens of thousands of meters in the sky. Like a bolt of lightning, it tore through the sky with unimaginable speed. In an instant, it had passed through the sky and vanished into the horizon. In the distance, the flash of lightning gradually vanished, revealing a young man in white robes. Streaks of light flickered around the young man as he used the speed of the lightning to fly forward with lightning speed. The young man was Jian-Chun, who was crossing through the entire territory of the divine kingdom of 9 stars. Using the linear lightning release to travel really is quite effective. I can cross such a great distance in a single instance. If I continue like this, it'll take me a lot less time to return to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jian-Chun murmured to himself. Some exhaustion filled his face. He could not use the linear lightning release endlessly, or even he would not be able to endure the exhaustion. The journey through the territory of the divine kingdom of 9 stars was not as smooth as he had imagined it to be. Not only were there bandits blocking the way, but there were also powerful beasts. Without the strength of a god, it would be very difficult to ensure his safety. This was especially true for some ferocious beasts and birds. Even though they did not take human form, they still possessed intelligence that was not weak. When they moved in groups, even heavenly deities would have to flee when they encountered them. If one wanted to pass through the entire territory of the divine kingdom, only overgods would be able to do so without any worries. At this moment, Jian-Chun's eyes suddenly narrowed. He saw a large group of people suddenly appear in the distant sky. They ranged from gods to origin realm experts. They were so densely packed that they blotted out the sun. From afar, it seemed like a huge, black cloud hovering in the sky, heading towards the depths of the divine kingdom of 9 stars. There are so many people. There's at least several tens of millions, or even over 100 million. It looks like they're moving. What's going on? Why are there so many people moving? Jian-Chun was curious. He immediately changed directions and flew in their direction. "Brother, may I ask what has happened?" Jianshin stopped a middle-aged deity and asked. The middle-aged man was dejected. He was in low spirits. When he heard Jianshin's question, he raised his head and glanced at Jianshin. He ignored him and directly flew past Jianshin. Jianshin was surprised, but he did not mind. He glanced past the crowd and stopped another early god. He gave off the pressure of a sword spirit expert and asked the same question again. The early god's face immediately changed when he sensed Jianshin's chilling pressure. He replied politely, "Senior, we're all people of the divine kingdom of three cauldrons. The heavenly demon religion's 9th army is currently attacking the divine kingdom of three cauldrons. Wherever the 9th army of the heavenly demon religion passes by, lives will be lost. The divine kingdom of three cauldrons is about to be destroyed. We've all fled to the divine kingdom of 9 stars from the divine kingdom of three cauldrons in hopes that we can survive." "It's the heavenly demon religion again," Jianshin frowned. He had an ill omen. The heavenly demon religion had already attacked the divine kingdom of three cauldrons. They were extremely close to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, Jianshin became doubtful soon afterwards. The heavenly demon religion was such a great organization. So why did they still attack the divine kingdom of three cauldrons? He had heard about the divine kingdom of three cauldrons before. It was a divine kingdom on the same level as the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The strongest expert, there was only the divine king. Logically speaking, an organization under the rule of a mere divine king should not have caught the attention of the heavenly demon religion. Chapter 1771. After a moment of silence, Jianshin asked the old man again, "Then do you know why the heavenly demon religion has declared war on the divine kingdom of three cauldrons? Has the divine kingdom of three cauldrons offended the heavenly demon religion?" As soon as the heavenly demon religion was mentioned, deep hatred appeared in the god's eyes. He said, "Why would the heavenly demon religion need a reason to wipe out the divine kingdom of three cauldrons? They're just a demonic religion. It's not like it's the first time they've wiped out divine kingdoms, sects, and clans." Jinshin's face changed slightly when he heard that. He said, "Does the heavenly demon religion do these things often?" The god glanced at Jinshin in a rather strange manner and said, "That's right. The heavenly demon religion does often wipe out divine kingdoms, sects, and clans. Does Senior not know about this?" Jinshin became stern. He was basically certain that the heavenly demon religion had not wiped out the divine kingdom of three cauldrons because the divine kingdom of three cauldrons had offended them. That was because these things were nothing out of the ordinary for them. Right now, he was worried about whether the heavenly demon religion would continue to move against the divine kingdom of 9 stars, or even the divine kingdom of Pingtian after wiping out the divine kingdom of three cauldrons. Although he had no attachment to these divine kingdoms, Jianshin had already planned to establish himself in the Dong, a province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. After all, it was impossible for the people who had followed him to the Saint's World from the Tian Yuan continent to follow him everywhere. He needed to find a place to settle them down. Jianshin dared not waste any more time after learning about the heavenly demon religion's actions. He immediately rushed off, using the linear lightning release from time to time. He hurried towards the Dong, a province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, as quickly as he could. Jianshin crossed the entire divine kingdom of 9 stars in just 7 days as he traveled at full speed. He returned to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. "I'll be back in the Dong, a province, in 3 days at most." Jianshin hovered in the sky above the divine kingdom of Pingtian as he looked in the direction of the Dong, a province. Afterwards, he used the linear lightning release and vanished as a streak of light. Right now, he could only sigh at how short the linear lightning release could last. His terrifying speed could only last for less than a few seconds. Otherwise, he would have returned to the divine kingdom of Pingtian long ago with the speed of the linear lightning release. 2 days later, Jianshin finally returned to the Dong and province. However, he did not go to God King Duanmu's dwelling. Instead, he directly flew to the dark cloud mountains. Deeping of Pingtian of Pingtian of Pingtian of Pingtian of cultivation of Pingtian of Pingtian of Pingtian of Pingtian's. The matter at hand was to increase his strength as soon as possible. Once his chaotic body reached the 10th layer, he would be able to last for a while even against late over-gods with the advantage of the chaotic body. The Dark Cloud Mountains had already been taken over by the powerful clans of the Dong and province. There were over a dozen of them in total, and they all sent people to mine high-grade divine crystals. There were even god-level ancestors sitting there. At this moment, on a flat mountain peak in the Dark Cloud Mountain range, there were two old men sitting on the ground, playing chess as they chatted. Beside them, there were two young women respectfully pouring tea for them. Looking at their careful appearance, it was as if they were afraid that the slightest bit of tea would spill out. The disturbance caused by the Divine King's dwelling has already lasted for several years. I really don't know when it'll end. A gray-robed old man sighed gently. An old man in simple robes sat before the gray-robed old man. The old man finished moving a chess piece and stared at the chessboard. He said leisurely, "It's said that a soul has already approached the Divine King's remains. The disturbance caused by the Divine King's dwelling has already reached its final stages. In my opinion, it'll end before long. The Divine King's dwelling has appeared in our Dong and province. It's just a pity that we were unable to benefit from it all. The over-gods have taken all of it. As for us gods, we don't even have the chance to take part in it," the gray-robed old man said in pity. The old man chuckled when he heard that. "It's a good thing that you don't have the right to take part in it. Look at how many of the experts have died. Half of the gods from the Wainer clan have died. Some of the other clans in the Dong and province have died as well. There have even been over-gods who have died in the depths of the dwelling. Not only have they failed to obtain the treasure, they've even lost their lives. In my opinion, it's not worth it at all. I heard that the people of the Mo clan and the Ando clan entered the dwelling before the over-gods. Do you think they've obtained anything from the dwelling?" The gray-robed old man asked with interest. The old man shook his head without any hesitation at all. He said firmly, "Do you think they'll be able to survive? The over-gods aren't merciful people." "Fair enough. The people of the Mo clan and the Ando clan are probably all dead already. It doesn't matter if they've obtained anything good or not. The over-gods won't spare them," the gray-robed old man nodded. He found that to be reasonable. The two old men both came from powerful clans in the Dawn province. They had been specially sent over to watch over the place. On one hand, they were there to prevent people from trying to take advantage of this place, and on the other hand, they were there to supervise. As the two old men played chess leisurely and discussed the situation in the Divine King's dwelling with great interest, a young man in white robes appeared on the mountain silently. The young man concealed his presence, making him seem like an ordinary person. The two early gods actually failed to sense him at all when he approached them. It wasn't until he was standing beside the chessboard that the two old men who were playing chess suddenly discovered his existence. Their expressions suddenly changed in unison. "Who are you?" The two old men suddenly stood up and stared at Jianchen cautiously. Their hearts were filled with shock. The person who could approach them so silently was definitely an expert who was far more powerful than them. "Who I am is not important. What's important is that this mind belongs to me from now on," the young man in white said calmly. To no surprise, he was Jianchen. The faces of the two old men changed when they heard that Jianchen wanted the mine. The gray-robed old man said coldly, "This mine belongs to our entire Dong province. Sir, do you want to become enemies with the entire Dong province?" "I never wanted to become enemies with the Dong and province. If the Dong and province wants to become enemies with me, I don't mind. Moreover, this mine doesn't belong to your Dong and province. It belonged to the Liu family before, but it's been taken over by your powerful clans," Jianchen said. Before he entered God King Duanmu's dwelling, he was powerless against the powerful clans of the Dong and province. All he could do was watch as they took over the place. But now, so what if he became enemies with the entire Dong and province? Chapter 1772. The hearts of the two old men immediately sank when they saw how Jianshan did not show any fear even after they had brought out all the organizations in the Dong province. They sensed that the situation was extremely bad. In particular, when they saw how indifferent Jianshan was when he mentioned the Dong province, the two old men could vaguely sense that the high-grade divine crystal mine had probably attracted an extremely powerful enemy this time. The two old men's faces sank. They looked at each other, and a vicious light appeared in the eyes of the gray-robed old man. He snorted coldly at Jianshan. "If you want to take the mine for yourself, you'll have to defeat the two of us first." As he spoke, a black longsword appeared in the old man's hand. As he swung the longsword, streams of black light were swept up. As the layer of black light spread out, the blazing sun in the sky was covered by the light. The entire world became dark. Jinshan's expression did not change. He stood where he was without moving at all. He did not even raise his eyes, completely ignoring the darkness. He extended a finger, and a strand of sword chi shot out. It shone with dazzling light as it radiated with a terrifying sword chi that caused the expressions of the two early gods from the Dong province to change. Boom! Amidst the rumbling sound, the endless darkness that permeated the world immediately dissipated. The gray-robed old man spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was like a kite with a broken string as he powerlessly flew backwards. His expression was dispirited, and he had already suffered heavy injuries. The white-robed old man's expression changed when he saw this. He immediately flew over and caught the gray-robed old man. However, just when he placed his hand on the old man's back, his expression suddenly changed. He felt an extremely powerful and sharp sword chi suddenly appear, immediately causing his hand to ache. His hand had been reduced to a bloody mess. The white-robed old man was shocked. He stared at Jianshan, who stood there indifferently, in shock. He was greatly shocked. The young man's strength was just too terrifying. Just a casual gesture from him possessed such unbelievable power. No one in the Dong province could do something like that. His strength has completely surpassed late gods. Is this young man an overgod? The white-robed old man exclaimed in his heart. After coming to this conclusion, his heart immediately jumped violently. Without the slightest hesitation, he immediately fled with the gray-robed old man. At the same time, he sent a message to everyone who was mining, telling them to leave this place as quickly as possible. Gods were ancestors of large clans in the Dong province. No one dared to question their words. The miners who were mining divine crystals in the mine immediately fled as quickly as they could after receiving the message from the white-robed old man. An overgod has come. He wants to take over the mine for himself. Everyone, run, an overgod wants to kill us. If you don't want to die, run quickly. If you're just a little slower, you might end up being trapped here forever. All of a sudden, panic shouts came from all directions. All of the miners were so scared that their faces turned pale, and they ran even faster. Jianshan stood at the top of the mountain and watched on calmly. He did not stop them. Only when all the miners had fled did he make his way to the very depths of the mine. With a wave of his hand, the bright moon divine hall landed firmly on the ground with a heavy thud. As the divine hall's door slowly opened, Shun Jian walked out in his black robes. As Jianshan hurried from the divine kingdom of 9 stars to the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Shun Jian's wounds had completely healed with the help of the pills. However, he had paid quite a price for consuming the fire cloud pill. His face was still sickly pale. Clearly, he was heavily injured. Jianshan could not help but sigh in amazement at the power of the 9 refined, life-returning pill again when he saw how Shun Jian still had not recovered. He had consumed the fire cloud pill as well, but he had paid a price as well. He should have been heavily injured, but not only did he make a full recovery after consuming Tong Tian's 9 refined, life-returning pill, but even his vitality had been replenished. Shun Jian, are you all right? Jianshan asked Shun Jian with some concern. Shun Jian glanced around indifferently and said, "Go cultivate at ease. Try to break through in the shortest amount of time possible. Leave the protectors to me." However, Once overgods appear, you'll still need to deal with them personally. Jianchun clasped his fist at Shunjian. After stowing away the bright moon divine hall, he directly made his way to the depths of the mine. Jianchun sat in the depths of the mine. As he circulated his cultivation method, the origin energy in the surroundings immediately surged over, condensing into a mist that revolved around Jianchun. Jianchun's body was like a bottomless pit, wildly absorbing the pure origin energy in the surroundings. As he absorbed it, the high-grade divine crystals hidden in the rocks in the surroundings immediately dimmed. They turned into ordinary rocks. Right now, Jianchun desperately needed to increase his strength. Even though using high-grade divine crystals was a little too wasteful with his current cultivation, he did not care. Shunjian currently sat on a mountain peak outside the dark cloud mountains. He sensed the abnormality in the energy of the divine crystal mine, and his face immediately changed. He said, Jianchun's cultivation method really is impressive. He can actually absorb origin energy so quickly, and he can even absorb all the origin energy in a mine. The high-grade divine crystal mine is the treasure of the powerful clans in the Dong and province. They definitely won't give up on it so easily. I just wonder what they'll do next. As Jianchun absorbed the high-grade divine crystal mine to cultivate, the two gods who watched over the dark cloud mountains hurried back as quickly as they could. They told all the powerful clans in the provincial city about what had happened in the dark cloud mountains without hiding anything. The dark cloud mountains had been taken away, which immediately angered all the powerful clans in the Dong province. The gods from over a dozen clans gathered together as quickly as they could. They all discussed their plans with sunken faces. In the eyes of these powerful clans, the mine in the dark cloud mountains had become their treasure long ago. This was because the mine was directly linked to the future development and hopes of their clans. It was extremely important. By Ziki, is what you said true? Is the person who took over the dark cloud mountains really an overgod? The person who spoke was a middle-aged man in red robes. He spoke in an unquestionable tone. The white-robed old man dared not tarry at all when he heard the middle-aged man's question. He immediately stood up and said, "Although I can't see through his strength, he was able to injure the two of us with a casual strike. His strength has definitely surpassed the late god. He's definitely an overgod without a doubt, and he has comprehended the laws of the sword." The middle-aged man in red robes was a late god. He gave off the feeling that he was close to becoming an overgod. He was one of the three peak experts in the Dong and province, one of the ancestors of the Hua family. He had comprehended the laws of fire. Chapter 1773. I've seen Ling Hogong before. That person isn't Ling Hogong, so he shouldn't be a part of our divine kingdom of Pingtian. Aside from Ling Hogong, there's no one else in our divine kingdom of Pingtian who has reached the level of an overgod with the laws of the sword, the white-robed old man said firmly. Others by Ziki. Do you remember what that person looks like? The person who asked this time was an old man with an ordinary appearance. The presence he gave off was also a late god. The white-robed old man nodded. He drew in the air and used origin energy as a brush, drawing Jianchun's portrait very quickly. I've never seen this person before. Even if I haven't personally seen the overgods of our divine kingdom of Pingtian, I've heard about them before. However, there's definitely no one like him. This person isn't from our divine kingdom of Pingtian. It looks like this person has come from another divine kingdom. Humph. An overgod from another divine kingdom has actually come to our divine kingdom of Pingtian to show off. Do you really think our divine kingdom of Pingtian has no overgods? Aside from the gods from the Wainer clan who had come to participate in the meeting, all the other overgods expressed that they had never seen Jianchun before. Their voices were filled with anger. Clearly, none of them had entered the divine king's dwelling. Even if they had not seen Jianchun. However, the god from the Wainer clan was not calm at all. He cried out inside, "How is this possible? How is this possible? He's actually still alive? He's actually made it out of the divine king's dwelling alive? And he wasn't even this powerful a few years ago. How has he become an overgod now? Should we tell them about Jianchun?" The early god from the Wainer clan hesitated, but his face soon became gloomy. He thought, the life stones of the two mid-gods of our Wainer clan have already shattered. Clearly, they've died in the divine King Duanmu's dwelling. Now, with the only two early gods left in the Wainer clan, we won't be able to gain a foothold in the Dong and province with that kind of strength. We'll probably have to leave once the news of Wainer T and Wainer Sen's death spreads. Whatever, our Wainer clan won't be able to obtain the mine anyway, so let's not get involved in this matter. Since that person called Jianshen was able to make it out of the Divine King's dwelling alive, and even the overgods were unable to do anything to him, it's best for our Wainer clan not to offend someone like that, just in case we end up being wiped out. As for Duanmu Divine King Yu, Sai, it's all our fault for underestimating the situation. The early god from the Wainer clan left in despair. He did not reveal any information about Jianshen at all. Only the Wainer clan possessed some information about Jianshen in the entire provincial city. The other powerful clans in the Dong and province naturally had no idea about him if he did not say anything. Everyone, please do not panic. Old Man has some ties with overgod Bing Lu of the Yubing clan in the Frigid Snow province. Old Man, will set off right now and go to the Yubing clan in the Frigid Snow province to ask overgod Bing Lu to uphold justice for us. The old man with an ordinary appearance who had asked by Ziki earlier spoke up. His aged eyes shot out a cold gleam. It was obvious that he was enraged as well. The old man was from the Nanyan clan. He was one of the three great experts of the Dong and province along with the Red Robe Man. The gods of the Dong and province all beamed with joy when they heard that. Overgod Bing Lu was an expert who had made a name for himself many years ago. It was said that he had reached the peak of early overgod and was only a step away from mid-overgod. Whoosh! With an almost undetectable gust of wind, the late god from the Nanyan clan left, hurrying towards the Frigid Snow province. The Frigid Snow province was covered in ice and snow all year round. The climate was extremely cold, making it a world of ice and snow. No matter how scorching the sun in the sky was, it was unable to illuminate this world of ice and snow. There was an extremely ancient legend in the Frigid Snow province. It was said that long before the divine kingdom of Pingtian had been founded, a supreme primordial realm expert had once passed through here. His blood, which was filled with endless coldness, had formed the unique environment of the Frigid Snow province. It was said that the changes here had attracted many renowned experts in the region. There was even a divine king who had specially traveled from afar to investigate the place, but he found nothing in the end. As time went on, the Frigid Snow province became ordinary, gradually fading away from everyone's attention. In the end, it became a part of the divine kingdom of Pingtian's territory. The current Frigid Snow province had already become the world of the Yubing clan because they possessed an overgod. It was exactly because of this overgod that the Yubing clan was able to reign supreme in the Frigid Snow province, ruling over the entire province. Today, an extremely ordinary-looking old man had arrived outside the main entrance of the Yubing clan. He was the god of the Nanyan clan who had just hurried over from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. After arriving, the god of the Nanyan clan became extremely low-key. With a flip of his hand, an ancient jade pendant appeared. Just when he was about to approach the guards with the jade pendant, a boy in white just happened to walk out. The boy was quite young. He only seemed to be 6 or 7 years old, and he was only at sainthood. However, the eyes of the guards at the entrance of the Yubing clan suddenly narrowed when he appeared. They immediately became extremely respectful towards the boy. This was because they all recognized the boy. Although he was not powerful, he was a subordinate of Ancestor Bing Lu. The boy directly arrived before the ancestor of the Nanyan clan. He clasped his fist and said, "Senior, the ancestor invites you. Please come with me." The old man of the Nanyan clan was clearly surprised. He thought, "I never thought that Bing Lu would know as soon as I arrived. The fact that he's willing to send someone to receive me means that he hasn't completely forgotten about the past." With a sigh, the ancestor of the Nanyan clan followed behind the boy. In the end, they arrived on an extremely cold mountain of ice. The ancestor of the Nanyan clan narrowed his eyes when they arrived. He stared straight ahead. 100 meters away, The hunchback Bing Lu had his back towards them as he sat on a piece of ice with his dragon-headed staff. The ancestor of the Nanyan clan revealed mixed feelings when he saw the familiar figure. He could not help but think about the times when he roamed the world with Bing Lu. Many years ago, he was close friends with Bing Lu. They had roamed the world together when they were still gods. However, Bing Lu had already become an over-god now, while he remained as a god. The disparity in strength seemed to have divided the two of them into two different people, causing their relationship to gradually drift apart unknowingly. Nanyan Tong, it's been several tens of thousand years since we last met, right? Bing Lu stood up slowly and sighed. Time flew by like an arrow. Now that he saw Nanyan Tong, he found him to be slightly unfamiliar. Yeah, it's been several tens of thousand years. Time sure passes quickly, said Nanyan Tong. Nanyan Tong said with a complicated expression. Looking at his old friend in front of him, he suddenly had a feeling that things had changed. If it were not for the importance of the matter this time, forcing him into a corner, he really did not want to trouble this familiar, yet slightly unfamiliar old friend. Bing Lu arrived before Nanyan Tong. With a wave of his hand, a stone table completely condensed from ice silently took shape. Bing Lu gestured for Nanyan Tong to sit down before sitting down leisurely. Nanyan Tong did not hold back. He sat down before Bing Lu. Although there was a huge difference in strength between them, he did not have to treat Bing Lu politely like he did with other overgods. Nanyan Tong, I don't think you've come all the way here just for a simple visit. Tell me what you're facing. I, Bing Lu, will do my best to help you, Bing Lu said. Chapter 1774. I really can't hide it from you, Nanyan Tong sighed bitterly. Nanyan Tong smiled bitterly and sighed gently. He said slowly, Bing Lu, our Dong and province has indeed come across quite the trouble this time. Bing Lu listened to Nanyan Tong's explanation quietly. With a gentle wave of his sleeve, the power of ice and snow surged out, condensing into 2 cups of ice before him and Nanyan Tong in an instant. He pulled out some precious wine from his space ring and unhurriedly filled the 2 cups to the brim. He then gestured for Nanyan Tong to begin. Nanyan Tong picked up the cup of ice with both hands. After clinking his cup with Bing Lu's, he drank all the wine in the cup in a single gulp. He said slowly, a small high-grade divine crystal mine has appeared in our Dong and province. Even though it's just a small mine, its existence is extremely important to our Dong province. It also relates to the future of our Nanyan clan. However, this small high-grade divine crystal mine has been taken over by an overgod from another divine kingdom. With the current strength of our Dong and province, there's nothing we can do to threaten an overgod. As a result, I've specially come to visit Brother Bing Lu and see if you have any ideas on how to deal with this matter, Jinshin said. Bing Lu glanced at Nanyan Tong deeply and smiled gently. Since you've come to find me for this matter, it looks like your Nanyan clan should have taken quite a large portion of the mine. If you can't take back the divine crystal mine, your Nanyan clan should suffer the greatest loss. Nanyan Tong smiled awkwardly. Brother Bing Lu, you must be joking. Currently, our Nanyan clan, the Hua family, and the Dong family have only taken 25% of the mine. The other 75% has been split between the other clans and organizations. Nanyan Tong paused when he reached there. He smiled mysteriously and continued. It's just that quite a few gods from the other clans in the Dong and province have entered the Divine King's dwelling this time, but not many of them have come out. On the other hand, our Nanyan clan hasn't suffered any losses other than the loss of a god a few years ago. The reason why Nanyan Tong had asked Bing Lu to share the mine with the Dong and province was because he had already predicted that the opening of the Divine King's dwelling would cause the powerful clans in the province to suffer heavy losses. As a matter of fact, many of them would lose the right to exist in the provincial city. The distribution of the high-grade divine crystal mine would definitely need to be rearranged. By then, their Nanyan Tong would be able to take the greatest share through Bing Lu's influence. Bing Lu nodded slightly and said with composure, "All right, I'll help you. Nanyan Tong, I hope you can become an overgod as soon as possible." Nangong Tong immediately beamed with joy when he received Bing Lu's reply. However, he seemed to think of something soon afterwards, and he added, "Oh, right, it's said that the over-god who has taken over our dong and province has comprehended the laws of the sword." An over-god who has comprehended the laws of the sword? It would have been fine if Nangong Tong had not mentioned the laws of the sword, but Bing Lu's eyes immediately narrowed when he mentioned the over-god who had comprehended the laws of the sword. As an over-god, the information Bing Lu possessed was naturally not something a god like Nangong Tong could compare to. For example, Nangong Tong had only heard about a few over-gods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, Bing Lu did not just know about over-gods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. He basically knew all the over-gods from the surrounding divine kingdoms as well. He also knew that apart from Ling Hogong and Jianshun, who he had worked with in the divine king's dwelling, there was no third over-god who had comprehended the laws of the sword in the surrounding divine kingdoms. Nangong Tong, do you know what the over-god who has comprehended the laws of the sword looks like? Bing Lu stared at Nanyun Tong with brimming interest. His carefree expression had vanished, replaced by a sliver of sternness. Nangong Tong was surprised by Bing Lu's change. He suddenly felt an ill omen, but he did not hesitate at all. Using his great memory, he drew out by Ziki's drawing once again. To no surprise, the person in the drawing was Jianshun. When Bing Lu saw that the person in the drawing was actually Jianshun, his face immediately changed. Afterwards, he gently placed down the cup of ice in his hand and sighed gently. "Brother Bing Lu, do you know this person?" Nangong Tong could not help but ask. After a moment of silence, Bing Lu said, "I do know this person. He used the jade of the divine king to enter the dwelling first. He's extremely powerful. 2 early over-gods died to his hands in the divine king's dwelling." Nangong Tong's face became rather ugly. He murmured, "He's actually one of the people who used the jade of the divine king to enter the dwelling? Was he the one who killed the god from our Nangong clan and the whole family a few years ago?" Bing Lu stared at Nangong Tong sternly and said, "Nangong Tong, we once roamed the outside world together. For the sake of our past, I need to give you a piece of advice. Don't offend this person. His identity is anything but simple. Not only is he extremely powerful, but there's also the shadow of a supreme expert behind him." Bing Lu could not help but think of Fairy Hao Yue when he mentioned a supreme expert. Even Fairy Hao Yue's weak soul had managed to break through to the half-step primordial realm with the power of laws left behind by the divine King Duanmu. What did that mean? It meant that Fairy Hao Yue was extremely powerful when she was alive. Her comprehension of the laws of the world had completely surpassed the half-step divine King Duanmu. Moreover, the young man with the fan who had saved Jianshun in the end possessed an extremely great background as well. He actually had the personal protection of a divine king. Nangong Tong's face immediately changed when he heard Bing Lu's advice. And don't look into the matter of the god who died from your Nangong clan. You can forget about the high-grade divine crystal mine. What he lacked right now is cultivation resources like divine crystals, Bing Lu continued. He was afraid that Nangong Tong would anger Jianshun. Several days later, Nangong Tong returned to the Dong and province. He did not divulge the contents of his conversation with Bing Lu, nor did he provide any explanations. He directly announced that the Nangong clan would give up on the high-grade divine crystal mine in the Dark Cloud Mountains and would no longer interfere. The Nangong clan's withdrawal immediately caused quite a stir in the Dong and province. Although the Nangong clan did not provide any explanations, the powerful clans in the Dong and province were no idiots. They could tell from the Nangong clan's attitude that the over-god of the sword who had taken over the high-grade divine crystal mine was not to be trifled with. After the Nangong clan announced their withdrawal from the distribution of the divine crystal mine, the Hua family and the Dong family remained silent about the matter of the Dark Cloud Mountains. Even the 3 peak clans of the Dong and province did not dare to mention the Dark Cloud Mountains, so the other powerful clans naturally understood that they probably could not take back the divine crystal mine. Even though they were all extremely disappointed, there was nothing they could do. It's been 3 months, yet the powerful clans of the Dong and province still haven't done anything. The black-robed Xinjian sat on a mountain peak in the dark cloud mountains. He looked in the direction of the Dong and province as he murmured to himself. It had already been 3 months since Jianshan began cultivating. During that time, Shun Jian had always been waiting for the powerful clans of the Dong and province, but clearly he had not even seen a single trace of them. After the 3 months of cultivation, many of the divine crystals buried deep underground in the small high-grade divine crystal mine had been reduced to the most ordinary rock because they had lost all of their origin energy. Chapter 1775. Jianshan sat in the air in the depths of the mine. Dense and pure origin energy constantly gathered from the surroundings. It gathered so quickly that it had even surpassed Jianshan's rate of absorption. As a result, the origin energy around Jianshan had basically solidified. It had even formed a cocoon completely condensed from origin energy surrounding Jianshan. After all, Jianshan currently resided in a small high-grade divine crystal mine. There was an uncountable amount of high-grade divine crystals hidden in the rocks around him. It was equivalent to being surrounded by divine crystals, so his rate of absorption was naturally astonishing. Jianshan's body was like a bottomless pit that could never be filled. He absorbed the pure origin energy in the surroundings wildly. As he absorbed and refined the massive amount of origin source energy, his chaotic Niden was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even though the expansion of his chaotic Niden seemed to be extremely slow, where it would only grow slightly every day, it was unbelievably fast for Jianshan, who had cultivated the chaotic body for so many years. It was far, far faster than when he absorbed the energy from the Yin-Yang Saint Rock or when he absorbed the energy from the evil spirit. This was because he was absorbing the pure origin energy within the high-grade divine crystals this time. Not only was it extremely easy to absorb, but it was much easier to refine as well. Because of this, the chaotic inner core in his dantian had grown from the size of a pigeon's egg to the size of a chicken's egg in just a short 3 months after he had cultivated there. At this rate, my chaotic Niden will probably reach the limits of the 9th layer in a year, Jianshan thought to himself. At the same time, a sliver of excitement appeared in the depths of Jianshan's heart. He anticipated the 10th layer of the chaotic body. The 9th layer of the chaotic body could only allow his cultivation to reach deity, but once he broke through and reached the 10th layer, his cultivation would directly reach God. Although the 10th layer of the chaotic body was still unable to make him an over-god, the increase in his battle prowess was extremely great. After reaching the 10th layer of the chaotic body, just the toughness of his body had reached a level where he did not need to fear the attacks of gods. Even if he did not defend himself and stood there without dodging, gods would not be able to harm him at all. The 10th layer of the chaotic body was just too powerful. Even if regular gods used their full strength to strike Jianshan, they would not be able to cut through Jianshan's skin. Only when their attacks surpassed the limits of what the chaotic body could endure would they be able to break through Jianshan's chaotic body and draw blood. This was the power of the chaotic body. All cultivators of the chaotic body could be regarded as invincible once they reached a certain level of cultivation. Only the prodigies who were also invincible among the same level of cultivation had the right to challenge cultivators of the chaotic body. However, they were more likely to lose than win. Of course, being invincible among the same level of cultivation did not necessarily mean being the strongest among the same level of cultivation. As long as they could crush 99% of their opponents at the same level of cultivation, they could be regarded as invincible among the same level of cultivation. This was because there were just far too few people who could be their opponents at the same level of cultivation. As a matter of fact, there were only a handful of people who could match up to them on a plane or planet. As Jianshan cultivated, everything in the dark cloud mountains remained the same. The people of the Dong and province did not disturb Jianshan, which rather surprised Jianshan. However, Jianshan naturally had no idea that the reason why he was able to cultivate here peacefully after taking over the divine crystal mine in the Dark Cloud Mountains was all because of what Bing Lu had told Nan Tong. In the blink of an eye, another year and 3 months passed. Jianshan had already cultivated in the Dark Cloud Mountains for a year and a half now. During that time, the chaotic knight in his dantian had finally reached the size of a fist. It had reached the limit of the 9th layer of the chaotic body. This speed was many times faster than when he was cultivating on the Tian Yuan continent. However, Jianshan did not stop there. He continued to absorb the origin energy in the surroundings. Finally, after another half a month, the amount of chaotic force that the chaotic knight in his dantian could contain exceeded the limit. It exploded with a boom, and surging chaotic force wreaked havoc in Jianshan's body with a presence of violence and destruction. Immediately, Jianshan's body trembled violently. His face paled in a single moment, and his forehead became covered with cold sweat. Droplets of chaotic blood even seeped out of Jianshan's pores with powerful pulses of energy, dyeing Jianshan red. With the chaotic body, he would have to go through the excruciating pain of refining the body every time he broke through. However, at the same time, the toughness of his body would increase by leaps and bounds with each breakthrough. Chaotic force was just too brutal. Without a powerful body, it was impossible to endure the power of chaotic force. As a result, the chaotic force would become even more powerful with each breakthrough, breaking the balance between the chaotic force and the body. As the chaotic force circulated through the body, it would injure the body, which was why it was so painful. Only when the body broke through with the chaotic force, becoming as powerful as the chaotic force, so that the chaotic force would not injure the body when it circulated through the body, could the pain be eliminated. This was the weakness of the acquired chaotic body. If he had the innate chaotic body, he would not have experienced the pain of refining the body at all, nor would he have gone through the pain of having his Niden shattered 18 times. A few days later, Jianshan made his way out of the mine at a steady pace. In just over a year, the small high-grade divine crystal mine had lost all its divine crystals. It had become an ordinary mountain range. The moment Jianshan emerged from the mine, Shan Jian, who sat on a mountain several kilometers away, suddenly opened his eyes. With a flash, he suddenly vanished from the top of the mountain. When he reappeared, he was standing before Jianshan. The light in Shan Jian's eyes flickered as he stared at Jianshan. Due to the difference in Jianshan's cultivation method, he was unable to tell whether Jianshan had broken through or not. He could only vaguely sense that Jianshan's presence seemed to have become much more powerful than before. Moreover, his rather delicate body seemed to contain an extremely terrifying and great power. "You broke through?" Shan Jian asked Jianshan. Jianshan smiled faintly and said to Shan Jian, "Why don't you try attacking me?" A gleam of light flashed through Shan Jian's eyes when he heard that. With a clear thrum, the dark cloud stream sword appeared in his hand. Shan Jian stabbed at Jianshan with lightning-like speed under the power of the laws of the sword. As Shan Jian knew just how powerful Jianshan was, he did not hold back at all, even though he did not use any battle skills. He used his full strength. With his comprehension of the laws of the sword as a late god and his cultivation as an early god, the power of his strike was no weaker than a mid-god. It was even slightly stronger than regular mid-gods. Chapter 1776. However, Jianshan did not defend himself at all against Shan Jian's attack. He faintly smiled as he stood there leisurely with his hands behind his back. He actually wanted to use his body to block Shan Jian's attack. Shan Jian's cloud stream sword stabbed into Jianshan's chest with blinding light. Powerful sword chi permeated the surroundings, and Jianshan's clothes were immediately reduced to dust. Not a single piece of cloth was left behind, revealing half of his body that did not seem particularly sturdy. The dark cloud stream sword shone brightly as its extremely sharp tip pressed against Jianshan's chest. However, to everyone's disbelief, Jianshan was not injured at all after receiving Shan Jian's attack with his body. Shan Jian's attack, which was even more powerful than regular mid-gods, did not even leave a mark on Jianshan's skin. The flickering light on the cloud stream sword was unable to harm Jianshan at all. Shen Jian's eyes immediately narrowed when he saw this. He was filled with disbelief. He knew long ago that Jianshan's body was extremely powerful. Back on the Tianyuan continent, Jianshan had fought Xiongzhong. He was clearly weaker than Xiongzhong, but he had managed to wear Xiongzhong down with his powerful body and supreme recovery. Afterwards, Shun Jian engaged in an intense battle with Jianshan in outer space. The battle had even split the moon in half. At that time, Shun Jian's strength had completely overwhelmed Jianshan. In the end, Jianshan had managed to injure him with his powerful body and unimaginable recovery. However, Shun Jian had never thought that Jianshan's body would be so unbelievably tough today. His full-powered attack was unable to harm him at all. Shun Jian was extremely shocked by this. Jianshan nodded in satisfaction as he stared at his unscathed chest. He said, "According to my estimations, mid-gods can't harm me at all. Only late gods can get through my defenses." What a powerful body. Shun Jian stowed the cloud stream sword away, as he could not help but sigh in amazement. Let alone overgods, even divine kings would not be able to do something like that. Even some primordial realm experts would not be able to do something like that. Gods were unable to threaten overgods, or even divine kings, because the origin energy of overgods and divine kings were much more powerful than gods. Even the laws they comprehended were more powerful than gods. Overgods and divine kings only needed to cast down a layer of defenses with origin energy and the power of laws, and gods would struggle to get through it. If they did not rely on the richness of origin energy and the power of laws, and just use their bodies to take on a strike from a mid-god, let alone overgods, even god kings would be pierced. As a matter of fact, some weaker primordial realm experts would not even be able to endure an attack from a god with their bodies. That was unless they had a cultivation method that practiced the body, making their bodies especially tough. It was also because of this that there would always be a few heavily injured experts on the Saints' World or the Tianyuan continent who would be slain by insignificant figures who were clearly much weaker than them. This was precisely because their physical bodies were too weak. If they lost their powerful cultivation, even some weak existences that they regarded as ants could pose a threat to their lives. However, Jianshan's chaotic body was an exception. With the current toughness of his chaotic body, even if he was heavily injured or unconscious, it would be impossible for mid-gods to kill him. As a matter of fact, they would not even be able to leave behind a single wound on Jianshan. With my current strength, I'm confident that I can face late overgods. Even if I can't defeat them, I'll be able to last for a while with the toughness of my body and recovery, as well as the healing pills. The only pity is that my Radiant Saint Force is rather lacking right now, Jianshan said confidently. His Radiant Saint Force was still at Class 9, which was equivalent to the Holy Emperor's. However, his body had already reached the level of gods, so Class 9, Radiant Saint Force would not be of much help to him anymore. Shun Jian nodded in agreement. If your Radiant Saint Force can keep up, your rate of recovery will definitely be even more impressive. Your first wound will probably heal before your enemies can even leave behind a second wound. Unless they're far more powerful than you, they won't be able to kill you. All right, why can't your Radiant Saint Force continue to increase? Shun Jian asked again. He also felt that Jianshan's defense was rather lacking due to the weakness of Radiant Saint Force. Jianshan frowned and sank into his thoughts. Ever since I condensed a soul core, my Radiant Saint Force has been unable to increase any further. I once heard from Fairy Hao Yue that condensing a soul core is followed by blooming 7-colored flowers and condensing a soul tree. Blooming 7-colored flowers and condensing a soul tree should be the realm after Radiant Saint Force. It's just that these realms have never appeared on the Tianyuan continent, so I know very little about them from Fairy Hao Yue. As a result, I don't know what blooming 7-colored flowers and condensing a soul tree are. After a moment of thought, Shan Jian said, I think all you lack right now is a cultivation method for Radiant Saint Force. Once you find a cultivation method in the future, your Radiant Saint Force will continue to increase. I also think it's because I don't have a cultivation method. Jianshan agreed. Not only did he lack a cultivation method for Radiant Saint Force, but he also lacked a technique related to martial soul force. Shaking his head gently, Jianshan stopped thinking about this. It was pointless to think about it right now. With a wave of his hand, 2 cube-size high-grade divine crystals suddenly appeared. They landed heavily on the ground with a heavy thud. Jianshan had obtained 3 cube-size high-grade divine crystals from the dwelling of the Divine King's disciple. Now, he directly took out 2 cubes. He pointed at the 2 cubes and said to Shun Jian, "I need to pay a visit to the Divine King's dwelling immediately. I might be able to help Fairy Hao Yue when the time comes." Shun Jian, take these 2 blocks of high-grade divine crystals. You can take them to the Imperial City and exchange them for middle-grade divine crystals to increase your strength. A cube-size high-grade divine crystal was a meter in length, width, and height, while a standard divine crystal was around a centimeter in length, width, and height. As a result, a cube-sized divine crystal was equivalent to 1,000,000 standard divine crystals. If these 2 blocks of high-grade divine crystals were exchanged, they could be exchanged for 200 million standard mid-grade divine crystals. Shun Jian did not hold back. He accepted the 2 cubes without any hesitation. If he directly absorbed the 2 cubes, he probably would not even be able to break through to mid-god. However, if he exchanged them for mid-grade divine crystals, it would be enough for him to reach late god. After that, Jianshan and Shun Jian separated for the first time after coming to the Saint's world. Jianshan directly hurried to the Divine King's dwelling, while Shun Jian took the 2 cubes to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian.